Chapter 466. While talking, they had arrived at the courtyard of old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion. Ruyan Great Elder Princess walked in familiarly without asking Madame of Duke Xing to lead the way. Madame of Duke Xing began to sweat on her forehead. She knew that this matter was difficult to deal with. But what else could she do? Could she push a master out? What was more, she still didn't know who did it. Who made things difficult for Xiao Wanru and herself? Thinking of that courtyard, Madame of Duke Xing's heart was bleeding. However, not only old Madame, but also Duke Xing was asking her whether she did it. If she did it, it would be like stabbing a knife into her heart. Xiao Wanru was not so important that she could stab herself in the heart and burn the courtyard that she had prepared for her son for so many years. After a short pause, he hurriedly walked inside. In the main room, Great Elder Princess had already talked to old Madame. Looking at her aggressive look, she knew that old Madame had suffered a setback here again. Great Elder Princess, you can't be so unreasonable. This matter will be investigated wherever it is. It happened because of the two servant girls. Do you really want the whole Duke Xing's mansion to bear the responsibility? No one wanted fifth girl to die. Our mansion also lost a lot of things, and that courtyard was carefully prepared. Old Madame's face was not very good. Early in the morning, she thought that she could sleep peacefully, but she was hurriedly woken up. When Great Elder Princess came over, she was interrogated again. No one was in a good mood. She was more and more convinced that Xiao Wanru was a troublemaker who stirred up this family without any benefits. It was better not to recognize this granddaughter and let her wander outside. Do you want to pay for my granddaughter's life with two servant girls? Great Elder Princess said with a gloomy face, and then stood up. In this case, let's go to the Empress Dowager to report this matter now. Great Elder Princess, this matter is also a private matter of my mansion. Your granddaughter is the fifth girl of our mansion. Don't I care about her? Will I watch her being bullied by the servant girls? I have sent the two servant girls to the Yamen. They confessed to the arson case. Even in front of the Empress Dowager, I will say the same. Old Madame stared at Great Elder Princess and said righteously. Sending them to the Yamen meant that Duke Xing's mansion was magnanimous. It was up to the Yamen to deal with this matter, and no one could find fault. Although everyone thought that this matter must have something to do with Duke Xing's mansion, it was now handled by the Yamen. Good. Good. Good, you actually pushed this matter to the government. There must be someone in your family who is lax in managing the household, right? Great Elder Princess was well aware of the twists and turns in it. Her face turned livid with anger at the shamelessness of Duke Xing's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. At this time, she did not intend to sit down and talk nicely. After finishing her words, she turned around and walked out. She wouldn't let her granddaughter marry into the family so easily no matter what. Great Elder Princess, you and our mansion have troubled the Empress Dowager again and again. Aren't you afraid that the Empress Dowager will find it troublesome? Seeing that this matter was going to be blown up again, old Madame fiercely stabbed Great Elder Princess. However, Great Elder Princess ignored her and left angrily with her servants. Madame of Duke Xing chased after her for a few steps but failed to catch up. She stamped her feet helplessly and came back to discuss with old Madame. Mother, what should we do? If the Empress Dowager asks, what should we say? Madame of Duke Xing was a little flustered because she had never been strong in front of Great Elder Princess. At the beginning, it was for the matter of Infanta Qinghua. Now it was for the matter of Xiao Wanru. It seemed that Ruyan Great Elder Princess and Duke Xing's mansion were on bad terms. Let her do it. We'll just say that this matter is investigated by the government and has nothing to do with us. Although it's a little unbelievable that two maids schemed against the new master, there are all kinds of things in the world. It's not impossible for this kind of thing to happen. Old Madame raised her eyelids and said coldly. Yes, Mother, I know, but the Empress Dowager will think that we make trouble again and again. Madame of Duke Xing was still worried and said anxiously after pacing around for a few times. Do what you should do. It is not us who want to make trouble in front of the Empress Dowager. It is Great Elder Princess who makes trouble and always goes to the palace. Great Elder Princess is to blame. Old Madam said righteously. Mother, you are right. But the relationship between the Empress Dowager and Great Elder Princess has always been good. In addition to some things in the past, the Empress Dowager stands on Great Elder Princess's side in everything. She may ask us to enter the palace again later. Madam of Duke Xing said with fear and panic on her face. Seeing this, old Madam became more and more angry. She felt that Ruyan Great Elder Princess had gone too far. It was obviously not a big thing, but she made it into such a mess, which made the whole capital city laugh at Duke Xing's mansion. Let's go to the palace too. Old Madam stood up with a sullen face and snorted coldly. If she goes to the Empress Dowager, we will go to the Empress. Yes, Mother. Please get ready first. I will go to order the carriage first. Seeing Old Madam get angry, Madam of Duke Xing said hurriedly. She took a few people back to her courtyard first, and asked someone to get the carriage ready to enter the palace. The Empress was related to Old Madam. Although it was a little distant, at least the Empress still recognized Old Madam and was very polite and respectful to Old Madam in the past. The Empress received the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in the side hall. After hearing what had happened, she showed sympathy on her face. Is this matter in the hands of the government now? Yes, it has been sent to the government long ago. The government told us after finding out. Madam of Duke Xing reported respectfully. Of course, she would not say that this matter had been concluded yesterday and sent to the government last night. The servant girl had pleaded guilty, so they could directly interrogate her. The details had been deliberated and could stand the interrogation. Since this matter was found out by the government, although your mansion seems to be shirking responsibility, it is reasonable and well-founded. Great Elder Princess can't be so unforgiving. The Empress said with a gentle smile. Her words were on the side of Duke Xing's mansion. Madam of Duke Xing secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and the smile on her face loosened. Your Highness's words are reasonable, but Great Elder Princess has always looked down on our mansion. Speaking of what happened in the past, no one wanted it to happen. Something happened to Princess Qinghua, and my son also had an accident. Who can blame who? Great Elder Princess hates our mansion because of what happened in the past. She will make a big deal out of it if there is any trouble. I hope your Highness can handle it according to justice. Old Madam felt aggrieved and wiped away her tears. She wanted the Empress to give a definite answer. Old Madam, rest assured. Since I know this matter, I have to listen to what the Empress Dowager Queen asks. The Empress Dowager Queen comforted her with a smile, but her words were not accurate and there were some discrepancies. Old Madam was disappointed and wanted to say something, but a palace maid hurried in and reported, the Empress Dowager Queen invites the Empress, Madam of Duke Xing, and Old Madam to go together. The Empress. Madam of Duke Xing looked at the Empress imploringly. Since the Empress Dowager Queen summons us, let's go together. The Empress stood up gracefully and walked out with a group of people. Old Madam and Madam of Duke Xing looked at each other and could only follow. In the Empress Dowager Queen's Palace of Benevolent Peace, Ruyan Great Elder Princess sat beside the Empress Dowager angrily and glared at Old Madam of Duke Xing and her daughter-in-law coming in. After they saluted, the Empress Dowager Queen asked them to take a seat. The Empress Dowager Queen sat down beside the Empress Dowager Queen. Looking at the Empress Dowager Queen who looked pale, she asked with concern, Empress Dowager Queen, are you not feeling well? Have you called an imperial physician to have a look? Why do you look so pale? What do you think about the matter of Duke Xing's mansion? The Empress Dowager Queen waved her hand, indicating that she was fine, and glanced at the face of Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion expressionlessly. Empress Dowager Queen, since this matter has been dealt with by the government, let the government deal with it. You are not in good health, so don't worry about this kind of thing. The Empress Dowager Queen smiled softly and reached out to touch the Empress Dowager Queen's teacup to feel the temperature. Then she personally picked up the teapot and poured a little more hot water into the Empress Dowager Queen's cup. Does your mansion have nothing to do with this matter? The Empress Dowager Queen did not care much about the attentive behavior of the Empress Dowager Queen, and her eyes fell on the face of old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion. This. I also. Old Madame did not expect that the Empress Dowager Queen would be so rude when they met this time. After being stunned for a moment, she stood up in panic. Forget it. This matter is not clear now. Both you and Great Elder Princess should make concessions. Even if this matter is solved in this way, it is okay for the government to deal with it, but Duke Xing's mansion should apologize to Great Elder Princess's mansion. They should bear the crime of lax supervision. Why did such a thing happen as soon as the daughter of the first branch of your mansion came back? The Empress Dowager Queen's face became colder and colder. Without letting old Madame speak more, she directly made a conclusion. Her words made old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion totter. Madame of Duke Xing hurriedly reached out to hold old Madame. What? Do you think this matter is serious? The Empress Dowager Queen frowned and looked unhappily at old Madame, whose face had changed dramatically. I dare not. I will prepare a gift to apologize to Great Elder Princess when I go back. Old Madame lowered her head sullenly, concealed the anger in her eyes, and replied respectfully. That's good. Your mansions can be regarded as in-laws. Now you have Xiao Wanru. In the future, you will also be connected with each other. How can you go to the palace to quarrel from time to time? What will the officials and the nobles say? The Empress Dowager Queen's face softened and said earnestly. A palace maid had already come over to help the trembling old Madame of Duke Xing sit down. Such a good girl. She is so likable. If I have such a granddaughter, I will definitely wake up with a smile even in my dreams. She is so healthy and beautiful. Chapter 467. Old Madame hurriedly restrained the grievances in her heart and even showed a kind smile on her face. She persuaded, Empress Dowager, don't be sad. Children and grandchildren have their own happiness. Prince Chen will gradually get better. You see, after so many years, isn't Prince Chen's health getting better slowly? This child's body. The Empress Dowager couldn't go on. She was really distressed for her grandson. Thinking of last night when she went to see this child and saw his lifeless look, she felt very uncomfortable and her whole heart ached. Later, when she said something about Xiao Wanru, the child became a little interested and occasionally responded to her. Although his voice was very weak, it could be seen that he was in a much better mood. This was also the reason why the Empress Dowager was furious when she heard that Duke Xing's mansion treated Xiao Wanru badly this morning. If the fifth miss of Xiao's mansion could make Chen more interested and not be so lifeless in the future, she would definitely protect this girl well and never let anyone bully her. Old Madam, don't be sad. This matter has to be done slowly. Prince Chen's temper will gradually get better. Let him be obedient for the time being. Ruyan Great Elder Princess sighed. Just now, the Empress Dowager had mentioned to her about the conversation between the grandmother and the grandson last night. What Great Elder Princess said is very reasonable. At this time, we shouldn't be anxious. Prince Chen needs to take good care of his body and state of mind. If anything happens, let him be first. Old Madame agreed with Great Elder Princess's words without any grudge, and her expression made people feel that she was a kind old lady. As grandmothers, we are old and have no hope. We just hope that the younger generation can get better. Otherwise, what else can we do? These words touched the Empress Dowager's heart, and she nodded repeatedly. The Empress glanced at old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion calmly and frowned slightly. But when she saw Great Elder Princess looking at her, she immediately greeted her with a smile. All of you are right. Let's listen to him for now. The Empress Dowager sighed and made up her mind. Yesterday, he said that his brothers were going to be engaged soon. Given his current situation, he could only be like this. Seeing his lonely appearance, the Empress Dowager agreed to his request at the bedside. What do you think? His brothers were also not in a hurry to get married. They were still young, and the royal family had always chosen well. How could they marry at such a young age? If they did not choose the right person, the disaster would not be small. Originally, when he came back, he was a little regretful. Previously, he was indeed preparing to choose concubines for his brothers. When the news spread out, she had no choice but to say such words out of pity. Now the words of old madam and great elder princess dispelled her doubts. Chen Er's health was like this, and sometimes he seemed to have lost all hope. She couldn't stimulate him anymore. After thinking this through, the Empress Dowager relaxed a little and said something to Rui, and great elder princess and old madam. Although great elder princess was not very willing, she still listened to her words and promised that as long as Duke Xing's mansion handled this matter fairly, she would forgive them. Old madam promised that after going back, she would immediately go to great elder princess's mansion to apologize. Speaking of this matter, they had failed to supervise it well and did not find that the servant girls in the mansion had bad intentions. In this way, they could make peace. Later, seeing that the Empress Dowager looked tired, great elder princess, old madam of Duke Xing's mansion, and madam of Duke Xing all sensibly said goodbye. The empress took the opportunity to leave, but was stopped by the Empress Dowager. Empress, please stay. I have something to tell you. Yes, Empress Dowager. The empress answered and sat down again. After great elder princess and others left the main hall, the Empress Dowager stretched out her fingers to rub between her eyebrows and said, I have said that I will arrange for you, and Zhou, to be engaged before. Now let's put this matter aside. They are still young and can't choose for a while. It's better to choose slowly. When they are 17 or 18 years old, they will be officially engaged. Mother, isn't it too late? The empress almost couldn't believe her ears. She raised her head in horror and said. She had even prepared candidates. Now according to the Empress Dowager's meaning, it should be delayed for 2 or 3 years. The empress felt that she couldn't afford to wait. This was the best 2 or 3 years. How could she waste it in vain? It's not late. Of course, we have to take a good look at the marriage of the royal children. Otherwise, if something really happens, it will not be a matter of one family and one family. The Empress Dowager said unhappily and her face darkened. The empress hurriedly added, Empress Dowager, you are right. It's indeed inappropriate for the royal children to get married too early, but it's actually okay to choose slowly now, isn't it? Although the smile on her face was calm, she was anxious in her heart. They had said it well before, but why did she suddenly feel that it was inappropriate? She was upset now and couldn't remember what Duke Xing's daughter-in-law and Rui, and great elder princess had said to the Empress Dowager just now. Of course we can look at it, but we don't have to make a formal choice. We can't keep a good girl from marrying. The girl can't afford to wait so long. The Empress Dowager said slowly in a low voice because the Empress's gentle face looked better. Unless the girl he liked was too young, like Xiao Wanru, she would not be marriageable even after 3 years. In this way, the Empress Dowager felt more and more satisfied with Xiao Wanru. Otherwise, after 3 years, the Empress Dowager felt that it was not a good thing to let her grandson wait for such a long time in vain. Even if her grandson was satisfied, the Empress Dowager was not very satisfied. At this time, she was wholeheartedly thinking about Chu Liuchen's health and his marriage. She felt that it was not bad to imitate Chu Liuchen. It was not too late to marry a girl who would be marriageable after 3 years. Chu Luyue, Chu Liuzhou, and Chu Liuchen were the same age, and now they were only 15 years old, so there was no need to rush. As for the youngest Chu Liuxin, he was a child. A 13-year-old child didn't know how to choose a concubine. It was too early, too early. What about those girls I liked before? The Empress's face turned pale. She had liked a few girls in private and also secretly passed a message to them. Forget about the girls I liked before. They will be old in a few years. Those who haven't reached the age of engagement are more suitable. The Empress Dowager waved her hand. She would not forget that she wanted to hold a concubine selection banquet for her grandson before. Most of the girls who came were interested in Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou, which made her very angry. Her grandson was so good, but he was despised by others. The Empress Dowager even had an idea that since she despised her best grandson, she should not think about marrying into the royal family. At that time, all the girls who entered the palace were young ladies from aristocratic families in their prime. There were no girls who were too young. It was better to get rid of this group of girls who despised her grandson. But, there are a few girls who are really good. The Empress was shocked by the Empress Dowager's willfulness. She stammered for a while and said clearly, "There are some girls who are really good. I think they are suitable for Prince Yu and Prince Shou. If they are willing to wait, they can wait, but they may not be chosen." The Empress Dowager waved her hand impatiently and said, "You can leave now. I want to rest for a while." After that, she stood up with the help of a palace maid and went to the inner hall to rest. The Empress was left alone in the hall. She stamped her feet and turned to leave. She had to find the Emperor. What was going on? It was not the royal family to go back on their words. How could the Empress Dowager be so capricious? In the imperial study, hearing that the Empress wanted to see him, the Emperor put down the booklet in his hand and said, "Invite the Empress in." The Empress was well behaved and would not take the initiative to come to the imperial study in the past. A eunuch went to invite the Empress. After a while, the Empress came in respectfully. She first bowed to the Emperor and then got up. "Empress, sit down first." The Emperor said lightly, "What's the matter?" "Thank you, Your Majesty. I have something important to discuss with you." The Empress was not in the mood to sit down and chat at this time, so she said hurriedly, "What's the matter?" The Emperor frowned. "Prince Yu, Prince Shou, and Prince Chen are all 15 years old. Although Prince Xin is young, he is 13 years old. This is a good time to choose concubines. This kind of thing can't be completed in a short time. There are rules for choosing concubines for a period of time. After the selection, the engagement, and the ceremony will be held after the engagement. It will take at least 1 or 2 years." The Empress said with a serious face. "Shouldn't you discuss this matter with Mother? What's the use of telling me?" The Emperor did not understand what the Empress meant. His face darkened and he said unhappily, "Your Majesty, this matter was originally discussed with Imperial Mother. Imperial Mother also agreed and said that this matter needs to be slowly chosen. This concubine had previously taken a fancy to a few and had secretly sent people to investigate them. This concubine was afraid that it wouldn't be good if they were engaged too early. However, Imperial Mother just said that this matter is too early and should wait for a few years." The Empress said with great grievance. What she meant by this was that she had already spread the news. It was not appropriate for her to go back on her words now and damage the royal bearing. "Mother wants to postpone it?" The Emperor thought for a moment and asked. "Yes, just now she said that she wanted to postpone it. Before, Mother meant to choose early, and she had chosen before, but she didn't choose." In order to increase the strength of her words, the Empress mentioned the previous concubine selection banquet. It was indeed chosen, and it was not only once. The first one was chosen for Chu Luchen alone, but the later one was chosen for all the princes. However, Chu Luchen had an accident at that time, so the concubine selection banquet was not settled. In the end, no one was chosen. Since there was an example and they suddenly didn't choose, the Empress believed that the Emperor would carefully consider this matter. The credibility of the royal family couldn't be undermined. In this case, let's hold another one. Spread the word that if no one is chosen, we can wait to choose wives for the princes. The Emperor thought for a moment, then picked up the memorial at hand and continued to read it, while saying casually. Chapter 468. Your Majesty, how can this kind of thing be handled like this? The Empress shook her body and said anxiously. As soon as she finished speaking, she knew something was wrong. The emperor threw the memorial in his hand on the table, making a loud sound. There was silence in the imperial study, and the eunuchs and palace maids all shrunk their necks tightly. "Your Majesty, what do you mean? What do you think I should do? How is your plan going?" The emperor raised his head and his cold eyes fell on the empress's face. The empress was so scared that she knelt down with a plop, and her back was cold. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry. I'm afraid of disappointing the officials. Your Majesty, you think so much. You almost consider everything for me. You refuted the Empress Dowager's idea, and then refuted my idea. You alone can be the Empress Dowager and me." The emperor's eyes were as sharp as a hook, and he looked at the empress with a bit of scrutiny. The empress gave a sorrowful cry and her eyes reddened. "Your Majesty, this concubine doesn't dare to criticize you and the Empress Dowager. This concubine's feelings for you and the Empress Dowager can only be expressed by the heavens. You. How can you say this concubine?" The emperor didn't speak, but his eyes still fell on the empress's face. The empress didn't dare to move, but slightly trembled, and her whole heart was in her throat. After a long time, the emperor calmed down and said, "Your Majesty, get up. Don't talk about my mother's affairs in the future." The palace maids trembling on the side hurriedly stood up and helped the empress up. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry." The emperor stood up and bowed his head, not caring about his weak legs. "Go and hold another banquet. You don't need to choose anyone. Let's see after a period of time. If you like someone, look at him in private first, and then report to me when it's time to choose." The emperor buried his head in the memorial again and waved his hand. "I'm leaving." The empress retreated step by step. When she reached the door, she turned around and walked out. When she reached the door, her legs suddenly became weak. Fortunately, a palace maid quickly helped her to stand firm. The empress took a deep breath and suppressed the fear in her heart. She had really crossed the line at that moment. She crumpled the handkerchief in her hand into a ball and slowly loosened it. She could not do anything for the time being. Nyang nyang. The personal palace maid saw that her face was still pale and hurriedly whispered with concern. The empress dragged her slightly tired legs and slowly walked forward. She had been too hasty just now and lost her composure. The consort selection could be done 2 or 3 years later. She could secretly communicate with the family she chose. Even if it was not necessarily the position she wanted to marry into her son's mansion of Prince Shou, she could still choose another position. Of course, there were a few families that were older in age, so they could just pick the younger ones from their mansions. Thinking of this, she felt that it was not irreparable. She brought a few palace maids and eunuchs to her own palace. She still had to discuss some details with her son. For this last banquet, the audience was wider. Everyone from 11 to 15 years old could be looked at. The focus was on those around 11 years old. Xiao Wanru left silently, but it attracted a lot of people's attention. The news that Duke Xing's mansion recognized the orphan girl, who was the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing and Infanta Qinghua, spread among the aristocratic families. Many people were waiting for the first appearance of the newly recognized fifth Miss Xiao in front of others. However, they were told that the fifth Miss Xiao was filial and would go to the Yuhui nunnery to observe mourning for her deceased biological parents for 3 years. For a time, the entire aristocratic family circle in the capital praised the fifth Miss Xiao. However, another piece of news caught many aristocratic families off guard and disrupted many people's plans. Therefore, many people no longer cared about other families' business. The Empress and the Empress Dowager were going to hold the biggest banquet. It was said that they were going to choose the princesses for the princes. However, some people secretly said that this time it was just a formality and they might not be chosen. They said that the emperor's children were still too young and it was not suitable for them to get married at this time. When this rumor came out, many young ladies of the right age and their parents were very anxious. Many people aimed at Prince Yu's mansion and Prince Zhou's mansion. One of the two was the eldest. The other was the most likely to be the legitimate wife. As for Prince Chen's mansion, everyone thought that they should stay as far away from it as possible. His identity was originally embarrassing and he would definitely not be able to get a good result. In addition, he seemed to have a short life, so no one was willing to send their daughter to the fire pit. As for the last one, Prince Xian, he still had a childish temper. According to his appearance, even if he grew up, he would not have any thoughts about the throne. Or even if he had thoughts about it, it would be impossible. However, he should not be wrong to be an idle king for a lifetime. Some of them still liked him, at least he was stable. This time was the last chance for many young ladies of aristocratic families who had reached the age of age. Since it was the last chance, they must seize it. For a time, the clothes and accessories for women in the capital city immediately became scarce, which led to the business of a large number of shops in this field. The brand of butterfly clothing shop was also really established with this wave of business. When the news reached the mountain, Xiao Wanru was sitting and listening to scriptures with Mingqiu nun in a black robe. She closed her eyes and put her palms together, looking extremely peaceful. Yujie came in and gently pulled Xiao Wanru's sleeve. Xiao Wanru opened her eyes slightly and saw Yujie winking at her. She stood up slowly, walked out of the Buddha hall, and then stood in a corner. "Miss, they are going down the mountain." Yujie glanced to the east. That was the direction where Xiao Yenru lived, which was opposite to the west where Xiao Wanru lived. There was a long distance between the two courtyards, but it did not prevent Xiao Wanru from meeting the maid sent by the first Miss Xiao on the first day she came here. She said that the first Miss Xiao was going to conceive a painting and had been in the silence room these days. But after coming out of the silence room, she would meet Xiao Wanru and her sister. Her words were extremely polite and she also brought gifts. She said that the two sisters should help each other in the nunnery for a period of time. But until now, the two of them had not met, and now they were going down the mountain in a hurry. Since the two of them were destined to meet, Xiao Wanru had already sent Yujie to keep an eye on Xiao Yenru. "What's the urgent matter?" Xiao Wanru asked calmly. She was not surprised by the result. Xiao Yenru had never been easy to deal with. Now Xiao Wanru was dressed in an extremely simple way. From the outside, she looked like a nun who was cultivating with hair. Her long hair was tied up with a very ordinary white jade hairpin. At this moment, her watery eyes blinked twice and she looked to the east. It's said that old madam of the mansion is ill. She is seriously ill and urgently asked to go down the mountain. Yujie reported in a low voice. Old madam of Duke Xing's mansion was ill, and she was seriously ill. Then she wouldn't be the only one he wanted to recruit. "Have you asked when I will come back?" Xiao Wanru said softly. "I don't think she will come back. I heard that she has moved away all her things, including the paintings in the silence room. It is said that she will serve old madam well. She may come back at any time, or she may not come back. She should take all the things she should take with her." Yujie had secretly inquired about it from several nuns who helped to deal with the miscellaneous things. Xiao Wanru smiled softly. As soon as she went up the mountain, Xiao Yenru was bound to leave. Both of them were daughters of Duke Xing's mansion, but she went to the nunnery to observe filial piety for 3 years. As for Xiao Yenru, she came here to learn painting. It seemed that she would stay for about half a year at most. Previously, in order to say that she was bent on going up the mountain to learn painting, she specially built a silence room in the courtyard on the mountain and announced that she would not go down the mountain until she succeeded in learning painting. However, compared with her reputation for learning painting, there was a big gap between her reputation for learning painting and her reputation for filial piety. If the first Miss Xiao continued to stay, it would only make people feel that she had fallen behind and even be criticized by others. After all, Xiao Wanru's parents were also her aunt and uncle. Her cousin was observing filial piety. How could she still be in a good mood to sit here and watch the wind sweep away the clouds, laugh and write leisurely? Sure enough, she found an excuse to go down the mountain after a few days. At this time in the last life, Xiao Yanru still learned painting on the mountain and went down the mountain in the summer, instead of leaving in a hurry at this time. Although old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion had an old problem, if she was properly treated, it was impossible for her to be seriously ill all of a sudden and have Xiao Yanru personally serve the decoction to the bed. She happened to be in the same situation. It was not the best time for them to meet now. At this time, the capital city was full of people. After Xiao Yanru left the Yuhui nunnery, it would be difficult for her to stay alone. It was impossible for her to maintain the image of an extraordinary talented girl as she had in the last life. In the end, even if she entered the palace and became a favored concubine, she still made people feel that she was noble and elegant. I heard that her silence room is built very well. Go and ask her later if I can use her empty silence room. Narrowing her watery eyes, Xiao Wanru reached out to pull her black clothes and said with a faint smile. Xiao Yanru's courtyard was the best courtyard in the entire Yuhui nunnery. It was renovated based on the original foundation of the Yuhui nunnery. Just like the room she lived in, Rui and Great Elder Princess helped to renovate and design it so that she could live in it. Naturally, it was different from other ordinary incense rooms, and its location was not the same as that of other pilgrims who rarely stayed for a night. Rui and Great Elder Princess only renovated it a little because she was in a hurry. It was said that Xiao Yanru's courtyard and the silence room inside were repaired for a full 1 or 2 months. Outsiders only thought that the first Miss Xiao came up with this idea because she admired Pushun Nun's painting skills, but in fact, she had made preparations long ago, so she let the first Miss go up the mountain. Her courtyard and her silence room were the best in the entire Yuhui nunnery. I'm afraid that Pushun Nun won't agree, Yu Jie said with embarrassment. Chapter 469. It was Pushun Nun's first disciple, Hui Qing, who came out from behind the wall. She was in her 20s and a little thin. At this moment, she looked at Xiao Wanru unkindly. Since they met on the mountain, she had been looking for trouble with Xiao Wanru. Seeing that she was rude to her master again, Yu Jie wanted to get angry, but Xiao Wanru reached out to stop her and motioned for her to step back. Hui Qing Nun, I was asking the servant girl about Big Sister. I heard that Big Sister went down the mountain because of Grandma's illness. I was worried, so I missed listening to the scriptures. Xiao Wanru said softly. What are you talking about? If you didn't listen carefully, then you didn't listen carefully. Fifth Miss came up the mountain for filial piety, not for sightseeing. As a punishment, Fifth Miss will not have lunch for a while. Clean this hall. Hui Qing raised her head and said sharply. Yu Jie was so angry that she almost wanted to jump in. This person named Hui Qing was obviously looking for trouble on purpose. Our fifth miss is so young and doesn't have the strength to work without food. How dare you talk back? Don't think that I won't do anything to you just because you are a servant girl of Duke Xing's mansion. At the beginning, the servant girls of the first Miss Xiao were very well behaved. It can be seen that the servant girls are like their master. My words are the words of my master. If you feel that you can't stay here, you can go down the mountain. The mountain gate is over there. It's only a few steps away. Hui Qing sneered coldly. After saying that, she spat at the corner fiercely. After that, she ignored the master and the servant girl and staggered away. After taking a few steps, she suddenly stopped again, turned her head, looked at Xiao Wanru sarcastically, and said, Fifth Miss, if you have no patience, don't fish for fame here. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yu Jie was so angry that she trembled all over and almost wanted to pounce on Hui Qing and scratch her hateful face. She grew up in the nunnery, but she had never seen such a hateful nun. Xiao Yanru's servant girl was a good servant girl, but her master's servant girl was not a good servant girl. Who was she scolding? Well, what's there to be angry with her? She was just instigated by others. Xiao Wanru pulled Yu Jie's sleeve indifferently and said with a smile. Did you listen to Miss Xiao's instigation? Yu Jie gritted her teeth and took a deep breath. Of course, she knew that she could not make trouble on the mountain at this time. Of course, Xiao Yanru didn't order it herself. Those good maids could have done a better job, and no one would suspect that she did it. Xiao Wanru said calmly, go and inquire about the silence room first. Just go and ask Pushun Nun directly. You don't have to ask her disciples of the Hui generation. She couldn't see through this nun. She seemed to be a very noble person, but why did such a noble person accept such mean and harsh disciples? It was not only Hui Qing, but also her other disciple, Hui Ming. She was not a good person after coming into contact with them. She was an expert in the eye but an expert in the bottom. When she saw the powerful ones, she would flatter them. When she saw the weak ones, she would step on them. It was said that she had done this kind of thing many times. Her reputation in Huixi nunnery was not good. Although Yujie hadn't been here for a long time, she still knew this kind of thing clearly. She was born in a nunnery, so she had a lot of advantages. I'll go and listen right away. I'll secretly bring you some steamed buns later, Yujie said skillfully. Then she reminded her worriedly, when the preaching is over, they will all leave. Miss, don't work first. Wait for me to come and do it. Since she entered the Yuhui nunnery, Hui Qing and Hui Ming had made trouble for her miss a lot. From time to time, they would make her hungry. Miss was growing up, so she couldn't stand hunger. It doesn't matter. You can go first. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and nodded. The two of them separated. Yujie went to find out what Master Pushun had said, while Xiao Wanru entered the main hall and continued to listen to the scriptures. This time, it was the presiding nun of the Yuhui nunnery who talked about a Hinayana Buddhism. When she finished, 2 hours had passed, and the nuns left one after another. Only Xiao Wanru, Chu Lu, and Mingqiu Nun were left. Xiao Wanru stayed. Chu Lu walked to the place where the preaching had just been. She took the cushions and stacked them up. Mingqiu Nun's face darkened. What's going on? Are they going to punish you again? They said that I went out to inquire about the first Miss Xiao just now and violated the rules of the nunnery. They asked me to stay and clean up. Xiao Wanru smiled indifferently and stood up to help Mingqiu Nun up. Mingqiu Nun was now living alone in this nunnery, which was arranged by Chu Luqian. Although she was living alone and had just come here, all the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery did not dare to look down on her. She lived in the nunnery because of her excellent medical skills and the reason to treat Prince Chen. Even this matter was agreed by the Empress Dowager. If she were not a nun, she would not have been arranged to live in the Yuhui nunnery. Nun, Hui Qing is really hateful. She and Hui Ming always make trouble for Miss and seem to want to drive Miss down the mountain. Miss is here to observe mourning and has agreed to be filial for 3 years. If she is driven down the mountain at this time, how will she have the face to see others in the future? Even if she makes trouble in the Yuhui nunnery, it will be inconvenient for others to see her. Chu Lu said angrily. She had felt uncomfortable for a while when she saw Hui Qing and Hui Ming, but she also knew that she could not make trouble. Hearing Mingqiu Nun's question, she could not suppress her anger. If it were not for the fact that Miss had not allowed her to say it, she would have complained to Mingqiu Nun. Especially make trouble for your Miss? Mingqiu Nun asked in confusion. She was also a person who had cultivated in seclusion for many years. Although she had not reached a profound level of cultivation, she was basically not likely to be provoked by others, so her temper was much calmer. Yes, I heard that Hui Qing and Hui Ming had a good relationship with the former first Miss Xiao, and they kept praising her. Chu Lu complained discontentedly. Well, I'll deal with this matter. I'll talk to the abbess about it. Mingqiu Nun understood and said immediately. It seemed that this matter was not handled by the master of Hui Qing and Hui Ming, so it was more appropriate to see the abbess directly. Nun, you don't have to bother the abbess. I heard that the abbess doesn't care much and is devoted to Buddhism. Occasionally, she will preach scriptures to the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery. At other times, she is studying Buddhism and Buddhist scriptures, ignoring all kinds of things happening in the Yuhui nunnery. Xiao Wanru said with a smile, reached out to pull Mingqiu Nun's robe and shook it. Don't worry, they won't be arrogant for long. Although the people in the nunnery did not dare to offend Mingqiu Nun, she had just come here. Xiao Wanru did not want Mingqiu Nun to offend anyone here. I can see the abbess of the Yuhui nunnery. Mingqiu Nun had always been very good to Xiao Wanru and indeed regarded her as her heir. What was more, when something happened in the Jingxin nunnery, it was Xiao Wanru who mediated and saved the entire Jingxin nunnery. She heard this from Xiao Xuanzi, who served Prince Chen, after she entered the capital city. From this point of view, Mingqiu Nun was very grateful to Xiao Wanru. Jingxin Monastery was also the place where she became a monk. For so many years, she had regarded Jingxin Monastery as her home and had long regarded the nuns in the monastery as her family. Don't worry, nun. If I need your help, I will definitely ask for your help, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. As her watery eyes turned, even the light black robe could not hide her. She couldn't hide her charm and elegance. Mingqiu Nun sighed, reached out to touch Xiao Wanru's head, stood up and walked out. This child had always had her own ideas. Looking at her current appearance, she seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. In that case, let her be. He would also get someone to keep an eye on her, lest this child suffered a loss. Not long after Mingqiu Nun left, Yujie came back. She had gone to the kitchen to get a few steamed buns, and now she took them out for Xiao Wanru. Chu Lu poured a cup of warm water. Seeing that her miss was eating steamed buns, which were made of white flour, Yujie's eyes turned red. She had to stay in this place for 3 years. If Hui Qing and the others made things difficult for her for 3 years, how could she live with it? She and Chu Lu didn't care about it. They were originally from poor families. However, although Miss didn't eat very well, she couldn't eat steamed buns 3 times a day. Moreover, judging from the current situation, she couldn't even eat steamed buns. Xiao Wanru took a steamed bun, took a bite, and stood up. Miss, where are you going? Yujie picked up the small package with the steamed bun and asked. To the front. I heard that there are a few religious rites in the front today. Let's go and see if there is anything we need help with. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, as if she didn't see Yujie's slightly red eyes. Miss, you can go after eating first. Besides, we haven't cleaned up here yet. Chu Lu also stood up, looked at the uncleaned hall, and said angrily, in a while, Hui Qing and Hui Ming will come to make trouble for us again. Maybe even Mrs. Dinner will be gone. Thinking of the time when Yujie failed to steal a steamed bun and Miss really starved for a whole night, Chu Lu was so angry that she was so mean and not afraid of being blamed by Buddha. Because Miss had too many taboos, she almost always listened to them and accepted punishment, which coaxed them to forget who they were. On this point, Chu Lu felt that her Miss had done something wrong. She should have given them a show of strength when she came up, and she wouldn't have been bullied everywhere now. Her Miss had not been so weak before. If you don't clean up, we'll go outside to help. We'll find a big religious rites. Xiao Wanru winked at Chu Lu playfully, kicked a rush cushion aside casually, and said to Yujie, let's kick this place into a mess together before leaving. After that, she kicked another rush cushion into a mess. There were many nuns who had listened to the sutras just now. When they left, they directly left them behind and did not put them all aside. A few Chu Lu had put them away, and some Chu Lu didn't have time to put them away. The nuns' sutras were also neatly placed in rows and columns, which were well organized. However, after Xiao Wanru kicked them, they were immediately in a mess. Chu Lu, Yujie, kick a few of them over and throw some of the paper wrapping the steamed buns here. Let's go outside to help others with religious rites. Xiao Wanru squinted at the 2 maids and said with a smile. Chapter 470. When it came to the playboys in the capital city, no one could forget Prime Minister Zhang's son, Zhang Lanjue. It was not that this child Zhang bullied men and women and fought in the street all day long. This child Zhang had some special hobbies. He liked to collect some strange things, but he didn't just like antique calligraphy and paintings. Sometimes, he even went to the brothel to collect the round fans of the brothel women. It was said that he now had the round fans held by the 4 top courtesans in the capital city when they won the championship in the past. These hobbies had pushed this prime minister, who was said to be extraordinary, to the level of a playboy. Today, his mother was doing a ritual for his deceased grandmother. She specially chose a large Buddha hall. Mrs. Zhang took her son, daughter, and others to bow respectfully from time to time as the nuns chanted. Only this child Zhang rolled his eyes a few times and aimed at an incense burner in front of the Buddha platform. He was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. It was because he had been collecting incense burners recently. And it was this kind of old incense burner with octagonal corners. The small incense burner on the Buddha platform over there was just right. It was about the same size as the ones he had collected before. If he took it back, he would definitely be able to put it together into 10. It was also perfect. At this time, the hall was very quiet. There was only the sound of chanting. Everyone was bowing respectfully. If they made any noise at this time, they would definitely be punished by their mother. Of course, Zhang Lanjue did not dare to move. Although he was envious and only wanted to sneak the incense burner back, he could only look at it eagerly. With great difficulty, she managed to endure until noon. She eagerly persuaded her mother to rest in the side hall, where a vegetarian meal had already been prepared. Mrs. Zhang and Miss Zhang had been bowing for a whole morning. They were also very tired, so they did not eat first. They drank a few mouthfuls of tea and rested. Seeing that her son was about to go out, Mrs. Zhang asked with a sullen face, "Where are you going?" Of course, she knew her son's strange hobbies. At first glance, she knew that it was not a good thing. "Mother, take a rest first. I will go and light a few more incense sticks for grandmother. When I left just now, I saw that the incense sticks over there seemed to be going out." Seeing that he had been discovered, Zhang Lanjue replied seriously and sincerely, as if he really couldn't bear to see the incense sticks in front of his grandmother go out. "Brother, this is the Yuhui nunnery. Don't mess around." His sister, Miss Zhang Qilan, did not believe that he would do anything good and reminded him. "Sister, what are you talking about? Of course, I know that this is the Yuhui nunnery and all the nuns are here. A child from an aristocratic family like me has to avoid arousing suspicion and can't be intimate with nuns." Zhang Lanjue became more and more serious, and because of his sister's suspicion, he looked a little aggrieved. "You were only at the side hall." Madame Zhang was not fooled by her son and continued to ask. "Of course, where else can I go?" "Mother, don't worry, I understand, nothing will happen to me. What I heard before has spread throughout the circle of the aristocratic family's young masters in the capital. They all think it's a joke. I'm afraid it's not true, so they're just saying it." Zhang Lanjue knew what his mother was worried about and hurriedly said. "What is it? What is it? Brother, tell me about it." Zhang Qilan's eyes lit up, and she immediately became interested. It seemed that there were other rumors outside, which were still about this nunnery. What can it be? It said that a noble young master came to the Yuhui nunnery and took a fancy to a little nun in the Yuhui nunnery. When they met privately, they were seen by someone. After that, the little nun followed the noble young master to return to the secular world. How can you take this kind of thing seriously? Zhang Lanjue said indifferently. Hearing that he said this kind of thing in front of his sister, Madame Zhang was so angry that she picked up the cushion on the chair behind her and threw it at him. She scolded, "How can you say this to your sister?" Zhang Lanjue dexterously avoided the cushion and said with a bitter face, "Mother, it's not me who wants to say it. It's my sister who wants me to say it. Now that I have said it, you still hit me. If you want to hit someone, you should hit my sister." "Brother, I just asked casually. Who asked you to say that?" Zhang Qilan rolled her eyes and pushed all the blame to her brother. Although she was really interested, she couldn't show it in front of her mother. Otherwise, her mother would ask her to copy the women's precepts and women's rules later. Thinking that her brother made trouble all day long, he only punished him by kneeling down and scolding him a few times. She couldn't come out of the boudoir every day. Even if she said a few words that were a little too much, she would be punished. Zhang Qilan felt that it was better to be a man. If she were a man, she would be much more promising than her brother. At least she wouldn't become a famous playboy. The whole Zhang family's face had been lost by her brother. Hey, why is it me again? Zhang Lanjue saw that his sister cunningly pushed the blame to him and said anxiously. If you want to go, go quickly. Don't lead your sister astray. Seeing that he was going to say something else, Madame Zhang immediately shouted harshly, for fear that he would say something inappropriate again. This was the Yuhui nunnery. There were many people going in and out. She couldn't let them listen to her son's inappropriate words. Yes, yes, yes. Mother, sister, I will go right away. If you are hungry, you can eat first. I am not in a hurry. Seeing that his mother let him go, Zhang Lanjue was overjoyed and hurriedly waved his hand. For fear that Madame Zhang would stop him again, he strode to the side door. The hall was very quiet. All the people of the Zhang family had left, and so had the people of the Yuhui nunnery. In front of several large Buddha statues, there were not only large incense burners, but also a small incense burner on the side. The smoke in the large incense burner was curling up, and the small incense burner was also misty. But to Zhang Lanjue's astonishment, the small incense burner he had taken a fancy to just now was gone. How could it be gone? He had been staring at it just now, and it had been there. Zhang Lanjue really didn't believe it. It had only been a while. Even if it had flown away, there would be traces to be found. He squatted down at the place where the incense burner had been, turned over the hanging yellow cloth, and searched carefully. There was no incense burner, but there was a trace of ashes, and there was a trace of the incense burner being put down. The ashes were still on the way. Someone had taken the incense burner he had taken a fancy to, and it was at his own Dharma meeting. Zhang Lanjue was furious at this realization. He had always been the one collecting other people's things, but no one had collected his things. Following the traces of the incense burner ashes, he turned to another side door. Suddenly, he heard a woman's voice inside. Although Zhang Lanjue was a bastard, he knew that there was a difference between men and women. It was not convenient for him to go in at this time, but he was reluctant to give up his incense burner. It was about to be perfectly assembled. How could he bear to leave? In fact, this hall was reserved by the Zhang family today. The side hall on one side was used as a place to rest. His mother and sister were resting now. The side hall on the other side was the place where the things needed for the ritual were moved over. There were many things in it. Zhang Lanjue had also come to see it before. At this time, the people brought by their mansion were resting in another side hall. Was this the nun of the Yuhui nunnery? Suddenly thinking of the previous rumor, Zhang Lanjue was even more reluctant to act rashly. If he really brought a young nun back, his mother would break his legs. How desperate he was to fall in love with a nun, and he even had a private meeting with a nun. From the bottom of his heart, Zhang Lanjue felt that the rumor could not be trusted. He had thought that it might be that the little nun was not at ease and took a fancy to the young master. She took the initiative to set him up, so that he had to take her down the mountain. Thinking of this, Zhang Lanjue's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to easily open the side door leading to the side hall. Although the door was unlocked, he pushed open the side door leading to the side hall. Is everything ready? A pleasant voice of a girl came from behind the door, and there was a feeling of relief. It's all ready. Miss, don't worry. It's all neat and tidy. Even if Hui Qing comes to check, she can't say that we didn't work hard. It was the voice of a servant girl. It sounded like the name of a nun. He didn't understand why a miss from an aristocratic family was so afraid of a nun. Moreover, it seemed that the nun had been making trouble for the miss inside. We came to the mountain to cultivate. We can't go against the wishes of the monks. Only when we are well behaved can we observe filial piety for our parents. The girl's voice was very elegant, which made people know that she was a well-educated and polite miss at first glance. Miss, you have suffered a lot in order to cultivate well. But look, Huiqing and Qingming don't intend to let you cultivate well. Not only do they deliberately push all kinds of things to you, but they also find various reasons to drive you down the mountain. They say that you are making trouble by yourself. Obviously, they don't want to see you well. Miss, I'll go back and tell old madam. Let's see if they dare to bully you again. Another servant girl's voice was slightly different from the previous one. Forget it. If things get out of hand, it will be bad for our reputation. The Miss's voice was soft and calm. A servant girl said angrily, Miss, you are too kind. You always want to calm things down, so they are more and more insatiable. Chulu, don't talk about it. Let Miss eat a steamed bun first. It has been baked on the incense burner for a while and is a little warm. It's just right to eat it now. If you don't let Miss eat, how can her body stand it? The other maid sighed and said with a hint of sadness. Zhang Lanjue, who was listening outside, felt that he understood everything. For a moment, he couldn't help but be angry. How could there be such a nun? It was obvious that she saw that Miss had too many scruples and didn't want to ruin her reputation for cultivating in the mountain. That was why she dealt with this Miss so badly. The Yuhui nunnery had a good reputation outside, and it was the largest nunnery in the capital city. There were always some misses who liked to come here to live for 10 days or half a month as a way of cultivating in seclusion. In the past, Zhang Lanjue's sister, Zhang Qilan, had also lived quietly on the mountain for half a month. When she came back, she saw the meat on the table and ate 2 bowls of it in a row. At that time, he thought that the Yuhui nunnery had treated his sister harshly and said that he wanted to find the Yuhui nunnery to judge. Later, he was stopped by Zhang Qilan, who put down her bowl and said that she was afraid of eating vegetarian dishes and steamed buns every day on the mountain, so she ate a little more now. His sister became like this after she went down the mountain after eating, but the Miss here still didn't give her food. How much hatred did she have? Chapter 471. As a playboy, Zhang Lanjue still had a sense of justice. When he heard this, he almost kicked the door in, but after thinking about it, he turned back. He was a man, so it was not good for him to fight in the nunnery. He had to ask his sister to come over. Brother, what are you doing? Mother asked you to come back quickly. Before he took a few steps, he met his sister Zhang Qilan with a servant girl. Seeing that Zhang Lanjue did not come back, Mrs. Zhang was really worried, so she asked her daughter to come over and have a look. Come here, come here. Zhang Lanjue stretched out his finger and pressed it on his lips, making a gesture of silence. He pointed to the side door where the sound came from, carefully walked over, and waved to Zhang Qilan. Seeing her brother's sneaky movements and hearing the sound from the side hall next door, Zhang Qilan also became interested. The brother and sister stood behind the unclosed door with a servant girl and stretched out their ears to listen. Huiqing nun, you asked our miss to tidy up the Buddha hall over there. Our miss has already tidied it up and cleaned it up. You don't let our miss have lunch. We saved these steamed buns for her. It has nothing to do with you. Why are you still so aggressive? Do you really think that our miss has no one behind her? Yujia stood in front of Xiao Wanru and said sternly with sharp eyes. During this period of time, Yujia had been following Xiao Wanru and had always shown a weak and incompetent look. At this moment, she flew into a rage and glared at Huiqing fiercely, which shocked Huiqing. But she immediately felt that she was disappointing. Even the miss was so weak. What else could a servant girl do? The first Miss Xiao also said that it would be better to let her make trouble and make it so that she could not stay in the Yuhui nunnery. She had been in mourning for 3 years. Seeing that she escaped down the mountain after only a few days, she would have no face to say that she was in mourning for 3 years. Oh, what's the matter? Do you want to rebel? I just don't let your miss eat it. What's wrong? She said that it was cleaned. When I came here just now, it was very dirty. As for this steamed bun, why should she eat it? As a miss, she has no lunch. How can you two servant girls have lunch? Haven't you heard of sitting together? Hui Qing had been very powerful in front of Xiao Wanru these days. Seeing that Yu Jie dared to refute her, she immediately sneered. Was she afraid of a little servant girl? He was trying to suppress Yu Jie with words. Zhang Lanjue, who was listening by the side, was so angry that he almost laughed. The nuns in the nunnery were really excellent. Her words were not only unpleasant to hear, but she also used the imperial court sitting method with little knowledge. She was not afraid of implicating herself. Hui Qing, you're such a bully. Our young miss is not someone you can bully just because you want to. Chu Lu also stood up with a face full of anger. Ha, could it be that she wants to overturn the heavens? If you have the ability, don't meditate in our Yuhui nunnery. If you don't like it, go down the mountain by yourself. There is no one in our Yuhui nunnery to stop her. She doesn't work in our nunnery, but she still wants to eat for free. In her dreams. Hui Qing said in a strange tone. After saying that, he looked at the steamed bun in Chu Li's hand, which she had only taken 2 bites of, and slapped it hard. Chu Lu was caught off guard and cried out in alarm. The steamed bun in her hand fell to the ground and rolled twice. Immediately, the snow-white steamed bun was stained with black stains. These are our nunnery's steamed buns. Our nunnery does not raise useless people. Hui Qing said confidently. Chu Lu was so angry that her face turned pale. She gritted her teeth and her whole body began to tremble. Hui Qing, I have no grudge against you in the past or recently. When I went up the mountain to cultivate in seclusion, you found trouble everywhere and wanted to drive me down the mountain. From time to time, you told me to get out of the mountain if I couldn't stand it. I don't think I knew you before. You kept being mean to me. You threw all the dirty and messy work to us, master and servant, and didn't give us food. Whose intention was it? Xiao Wanru calmly pulled Chu Li's sleeve and motioned for her not to be angry. She turned to Hui Qing and asked contemptuously. This question was very direct. It did not have the usual, harmony is valued, tone. It was almost straight to the heart. Hui Qing was choked by the question, but then she was embarrassed and angry at the same time. She was actually frightened by a weak young lady. Could she still show off in front of others in the future? It doesn't matter whose idea it is. Anyway, don't think about staying in the Yuhui nunnery. If I tell you to get out, you should get out quickly. Don't come back in the future. Our Yuhui nunnery doesn't welcome you. If you insist on staying here, this kind of thing will happen every day in the future. I'll see how long you can hold on. Hui Qing was so angry that she spoke indiscriminately. Her thoughts were suddenly exposed, and she felt a mixture of shame and anger. Zhang Lanjue, who was at the side door, couldn't stand it anymore. He reached out and poked his sister's arm. Zhang Qilan also felt that she couldn't stand it anymore. This was clearly an evil nun bullying people. In the past, her mother had said that the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery were good. They were all quiet and had the air of Buddha. Listen to what she had heard now. They were not human at all. After exchanging glances with her brother, the 2 siblings immediately understood each other's thoughts. Zhang Lanjue kicked open the unlocked side door. Zhang Qilan rushed in with her servant girl and said loudly, "Where did this evil nun come from? How dare she talk big like this? Are all the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery bullying guests like this?" Zhang Qilan's voice was not low. When she heard Hui Qing's words before, she felt the same way. At this time, she stared straight at Yu Hui, who was stunned to see the side door being kicked open, and said, "Go and call the master who presided over the religious ceremony just now. Let's see if all the nuns of the Yu Hui nunnery are like this." The servant girl turned around and ran to the main hall outside the main hall. After a short break, the nuns of the Yu Hui nunnery also left the main hall, but there were still 1 or 2 guarding outside the main hall. "Hey, who are you? Who asked you to meddle in other people's business?" Hui Qing was shocked. At this time, she came to her senses and immediately flew into a rage. She didn't know who it was. She followed Xiao Wanru's footsteps and didn't know who was doing the religious ceremony here. But no matter who it was, no one could interfere in the nunnery's affairs. Someone will step on the injustice. Your nunnery actually bullies the miss who lives in the nunnery to cultivate. I didn't expect that the good reputation of the Yuhui nunnery is also fake. Zhang Lanjue was afraid that his sister would suffer a loss, so he sneered. Yes, there is such a thing. This is the first time I have heard of it. From what you said, there are many cases of bullying people in your nunnery, right? You let the miss who cultivates do the work, and it's dirty work. You don't even give her food. What do you think your nunnery is? Zhang Qilan said loudly with her eyes wide open. She felt the same. Just now, her mother said that she should live in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time to calm her temper. If she really lived in the nunnery, she would be bullied to death. Her temper was not so good. Maybe she would turn the whole nunnery upside down. At that time, her mother would blame her for not restraining herself. Thinking of this, Zhang Qilan suddenly felt that it was fortunate that she had discovered this kind of thing. Otherwise, when it was her turn, if she really made trouble, her mother would ask her to copy the women's precepts and women's rules 100 times. No, she had to help this miss vent her anger and let her mother know that the Yuhui nunnery was not a good place to go. The last time she came, she was lucky. At least she was not abused. This time, she would not be so lucky. It is said that the families of the miss who cultivates in seclusion have given her incense money. She doesn't live and eat for free. If she doesn't give the incense money, your Yuhui nunnery will not accept her. Zhang Lanjue put his hands on his waist and said. You. Huiqing was tongue-tied and speechless. Huiqing, what the hell is going on? An old voice came from behind. Everyone looked back at the back of Huiqing. 2 nuns came from the direction of the gate of the side hall. The first one was the one who spoke. Zhang Qilan's servant girl was leading the way in front. It was obvious that she had brought them here. Master Puyu, when the abbess was preaching, 5th Miss Xiao was secretly gossiping with the servant girl outside. After I went forward and said a few words, she even talked back. I asked her to tidy up the place where the abbess was preaching. If she didn't tidy up, she also sneaked out here to steal steamed buns to eat. As soon as she saw someone coming out of the nunnery, Huiqing, who was in a weak position, hurriedly stepped forward to complain. Master, you didn't say that just now. You said that this miss must do all kinds of dirty and tiring work well. If she didn't do it well, she wouldn't be allowed to eat. The 2 servant girls were loyal and gave their lunch to this Mississippi. You even came over and kicked her steamed buns. You also said that if you couldn't stay here, you would go down the mountain. You didn't let her cultivate on the mountain. You also said that your nunnery doesn't raise freeloaders. Hearing Huiqing's inverted words, Zhang Lanjue couldn't stand it anymore. He stood up to testify for Xiao Wanru. He reached out and pointed at the steamed buns that were still rolling on the ground and said loudly. Your nunnery is like this. Who else dares to come here? Zhang Qilan also said with righteous indignation. Puyu Nun, I have already tidied up the place where the abbess preached. Xiao Wanru walked to Puyu Nun. After standing still, she bowed calmly. Nonsense, you didn't tidy it up at all. Huiqing cried out loudly. She was really not afraid of this matter. She had seen it just now. Not only was it messy, but it was also a mess. The paper dumplings were thrown everywhere. When we left just now, we tidied it up. If Puyu Nun doesn't believe it, we can go and have a look now. Yujie took a step forward angrily and stood in front of Xiao Wanru. From her vigilant look, it could be seen that she was afraid that the people of the Yuhui nunnery would do harm to her Mississippi. She didn't know how the Yuhui nunnery bullied the master and servants. They bullied them so much that they were in a state of panic. Let's go and have a look. Don't think that we are all messing around. We have 2 skins and can say whatever we want. Zhang Lanjue shouted loudly. Yes, let's go and have a look immediately. If we don't, we will have a guilty conscience. Will the Yuhui nunnery help this kind of evil nun? Zhang Qilan naturally followed her brother's lead. At this point, it seemed that they had to go. A few servants from Prime Minister Zhang's mansion came over and stood on the side of their young master and Mississippi. Seeing them quarreling, Puyu Nun had a headache. She nodded helplessly and said, "Let's go and have a look." At this point, it was not enough to convince the public if they didn't go and have a look. The group of people went to the hall where the abbess had preached. Along the way, they met some other pilgrims. The pilgrims didn't understand what had happened, so they followed them and walked forward noisily. Some busybodies even asked around while walking. The servants of Prime Minister Zhang's mansion naturally helped their masters. Chapter 472. As soon as these words came out, it immediately caused a great uproar, and then people began to talk about it. The place where the abbess of Yuhui nunnery preached was not far away, so it didn't take them long to get there. Pushing open the door of the main hall, they saw a mess on the ground. The rush cushions were randomly thrown around. Some of them were stacked together, and some of them were placed in a mess. What was worse was that one was even standing, and there were some scraps of paper thrown there. The whole scene had nothing to do with the so-called solemn Buddhist hall at all. Moreover, it was the abbess of Yuhui nunnery who was preaching here before. Puyu Nun had always been well-mannered, but at this time, she couldn't help getting angry and looked up at Hui Qing. "Puyu Nun, look, she made a mess here, and she still has the cheek to eat lunch secretly." Seeing the situation here, Hui Qing was immediately overjoyed. She reached out to point at Xiao Wanru and said loudly. She was worried that other people in the nunnery had already cleaned up. Without evidence, she didn't dare to speak carelessly. Now she was not afraid. The evidence was still there. Although she had gone too far, the fifth miss had also gone too far. How could this be? No way, when we left with Miss, we clearly cleaned it up. Chu Lu and Yujia looked incredulous. They took a deep breath and their faces were full of horror. Yujia seemed to think of something. She suddenly reached out to point at Hui Qing and said angrily, "Hui Qing Nun, even if you want to frame our miss, you shouldn't throw the rush cushions that were originally neatly placed like this. Do you know that this is disrespectful to Buddha? You are disrespectful to Buddha. Why are you still practicing Buddhism and chanting scriptures?" Hui Qing Nun, when the nuns left, this place was still fine. Even after the nuns finished listening to the sutra, this place was still clean. Our miss just tidied it up a little and put the futon aside. Why did you make this place so messy in such a short time? What's your intention? Our miss was driven down the mountain. What benefits do you get? Chu Lu was so angry that her face turned pale. She reached out to pull Hui Qing. What nonsense are you talking about? This is your... Hui Qing was stunned for a moment. She immediately understood that she had been bitten back, so she anxiously defended herself loudly. Yes, this is what we cleaned up. Look, I accidentally bumped into it. There are some scratches here. Without blushing, Yujia pointed at the back of her hand where she had accidentally bumped into it before and said loudly. My miss and I cleaned it up. At that time, a nun in the nunnery saw it. If you don't believe me, you can ask who was outside the nunnery at that time. Did we finish our work inside and leave? Did anyone hear the sound of us cleaning inside? Chu Lu became more and more confident. The Buddhist hall shouldn't be in such a mess, but now it is in such a mess. Needless to say, someone must be trying to harm this young lady. Zhang Qilan stood on Xiao Wanru's side. Looking at the hall scattered all over the ground, she shook her head and sighed, alas, it's a hall for Buddhist meditation. It's really, although she didn't say anything, Master Puyu and the nuns who followed her all blushed. Even if she didn't clean it up, it was impossible for the hall to be in such a mess. Now it was in a mess and became evidence against the fifth Miss Xiao. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed that someone had deliberately framed her. Puyu Nun, please uphold justice. Xiao Wanru looked at Puyu Nun calmly with a pair of beautiful eyes with irresistible depth. Fifth Miss, don't slander me. Hui Qing saw that the situation was not good and scolded. Hui Qing Nun, this is the Buddhist hall. All the gods and Buddhas in the world will see it. Evil will be punished with evil, and good will be rewarded with good. Xiao Wanru said coldly. She looked at Hui Qing coldly with her only pair of eyes, which made Hui Qing shiver involuntarily. No matter what your intention is to drive me down the mountain, it's not up to you to decide whether to go down the mountain or not. Do you really think that I'm so easy to bully? There's no flawless trap in this world, and there's no airtight wall. These words, which had a hidden meaning, immediately caused the surrounding crowd to whisper to each other. Listening to all kinds of condemnation and looking at Puyu Nun's gloomy expression, Hui Qing regretted it to the extreme at this time. If she had known that the fifth Miss Xiao was not so easy to deal with, she should have thought about it carefully. How could such a thing happen now? At that time, when she saw the chaotic scene in front of her, she only felt that she had something on the fifth Miss Xiao and could do whatever she wanted to her. Only now did she realize that it was not that the fifth Miss Xiao did not tidy up the situation, but that she had deliberately messed up the evidence to frame her. She had shot herself in the foot. Hui Qing, apologize to the fifth Miss. Puyu Nun said coldly. Puyu Nun, this really has nothing to do with me. I just saw that it was a mess here and thought that the fifth Miss and her servant did it on purpose. Hui Qing argued loudly, unwilling to give up. Why did we do this? To make it convenient for you to drive us down the mountain? Xiao Wanru smiled slightly. Her smile was elegant and indifferent. There is such an evil nun among the nuns in this nunnery. How can they cultivate Buddhism? Zhang Qilan sneered. Zhang Lanjue looked up and down at Hui Qing and said loudly, you don't let her eat and let her do the heaviest and dirtiest work. Whose young lady can still cultivate here? Or does this nun have a grudge against this young lady? He reached out to pull a servant beside him and the servant girl behind his sister and asked them to tell the conversation between Hui Qing and Xiao Wanru in the hall. They vividly retold the scene at that time. After she finished speaking, Hui Qing's face turned blue, green, and then white. In her anger just now, she didn't know how she had said that. Now that she had repeated it in front of so many people, she found that her words were full of loopholes. Fifth Miss Xiao, I'm really sorry. I lost my temper when I saw the mess here and said those uncontrollable words. Hui Qing had to grit her teeth and apologize to Xiao Wanru. Isn't it the nuns doing that? Haven't you done enough of this kind of thing during this period of time? Xiao Wanru's face showed a trace of coldness. Fifth Miss Xiao, the Yuhui nunnery will punish Hui Qing. Puyu Nun coughed in a low voice and said. Xiao Wanru looked at Puyu Nun with a kind of rippling color in her eyes, but her eyes were cold. Puyu Nun, I know that your nunnery has promised my grandmother to let me observe filial piety and cultivate here for 3 years. I have also paid enough incense money and even rebuilt the previous yard for your nunnery. Why can't you tolerate me so much? You scold me, hit me, and starve me from time to time. As soon as I defend myself, you ask me to get out of the mountain. Is this how your Yuhui nunnery treats women who cultivate? They received money but didn't do anything. Moreover, they asked their miss to do this and that. Such a small miss couldn't even eat her fill. No wonder she was so thin. It was not only the brother and sister of the Zhang family who were filled with righteous indignation. Many pilgrims couldn't bear it anymore and loudly condemned the practice of the Yuhui nunnery. Puyu Nun's forehead was sweating. If this matter got out of hand, she couldn't handle it well. A nun squeezed in from outside the crowd and bowed respectfully to Xiao Wanru. Fifth Miss, our nunnery master said that she would find out the truth that Hui Qing deliberately framed you. She also promised that this kind of thing would not happen again in the future. You just need to cultivate in peace and don't care about the nunnery. Hui Qing disrespected Buddha and lied. She is punished to clean all the Buddha halls every day for a year. This punishment was very heavy. There were many Buddha halls in the Yuhui nunnery. It would take at least a day to clean all of them. That was to say, Hui Qing would be sweeping the floor every day for the next year. She used to be a supervisor of a Buddha hall. She only needed to follow her master to chant scriptures and listen to lectures. Now she was reduced to the lowest level of a nun sweeping the floor. Her face suddenly changed greatly. When she wanted to argue, she saw Puyu Nun's cold gaze. She had to gasp and lower her head. Her face was extremely resentful, but she didn't dare to say no. Will your Yuhui nunnery keep your words? After we leave, you bullied this miss again? Zhang Lanjue felt that he had seen too many such shameless people. Although he hadn't thought that there were scum in Buddhism before, now that he had seen them, he should think more about it. Of course, he would say it. He was a playboy, so he always said and did whatever he wanted. He didn't think that it was a slap in the face to say such words in front of the nuns. Not only Puyu Nun, but also all the nuns felt ashamed. Child Zhang, don't worry. There won't be such a thing again. The fifth Mrs. Identity is extraordinary, and we can't bully her. Puyu Nun had to brace herself and explain. Her previous identity was not simple. Didn't you bully her? This should be the fifth Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion, right? The Yuhui nunnery is really amazing. They even dare to bully Rui, and great elder princess and the people of Duke Xing's mansion. Zhang Qilan was smart. Thinking of Xiao Wanru's words before and after, coupled with some rumors and speculations she had heard, she immediately understood Xiao Wanru's identity and sneered. In a word, all the pilgrims were shocked and looked at Xiao Wanru in front of them in astonishment. The news that Duke Xing's mansion had recognized their lineal miss had been spread in the capital city these days. Many people knew it. It was also said that the fifth Miss Xiao was going to observe mourning for her parents in the nunnery. It had only been a few days, but she had been bullied to this extent. She was the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess and the lineal miss of Duke Xing's mansion. If it were someone else, would they have been bullied to death? However, some smart people thought of another possibility. It was said that everyone in Duke Xing's mansion didn't like the fifth Miss Xiao. The famous first Miss Xiao lived in the Yuhui nunnery and was familiar with the nuns in the nunnery. Could it be that the first Miss Xiao wanted to use others to deal with the fifth Miss Xiao? Otherwise, how could a nun in the nunnery have the courage to do such a thing? It's our nunnery's fault for failing to discipline. There will be no such thing in the future. Fifth Miss, please forgive our nunnery's fault for failing to investigate. Puyu Nun's attitude was extremely humble. She was the receptionist monk of the Yuhui nunnery. She had always been good at talking and knew what to do at this time. Nun, you don't have to be so polite. This matter has nothing to do with you. Please help me investigate this Qinghui nun. Why does she want to drive me down the mountain? What good does it do for her? Xiao Wanru didn't insist on investigating the fault of the Yuhui nunnery. She just quietly put all the blame on Hui Qing. Who got the biggest benefit? Chapter 473. Thank you for your generosity, 5th Mississippi. Don't worry. I will find out the truth. Puyu Nun secretly wiped her cold sweat. She was very grateful that Xiao Wanru did not pursue the responsibility of the Yuhui nunnery. Since the matter had been settled, the onlookers dispersed. Of course, the pilgrims who dispersed also spread the news. Everyone speculated about 5th Miss Xiao's last words. Who could 5th Miss Xiao, who had just come to the mountain, make enemies with? Even if they did, who dared to deal with her like this? Did the nuns have the guts to do so? If not, then who was going to deal with 5th Miss Xiao? Could it be that the first Miss Xiao, who had a good reputation in the Xiao's mansion, was really just dignified and elegant on the surface? Was she actually a vicious person? There were various opinions. Some people said this, while others said that. But it happened in front of their eyes, and there was evidence. Many people thought that it had something to do with the first Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion. Didn't they all say that the people of Duke Xing's mansion didn't like this 5th Miss Xiao? Shan Yunan also left with a group of nuns of the Yuhui nunnery, leaving the Zhang siblings and Xiao Wanru alone. Are you the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing? Zhang Lanjue looked Xiao Wanru up and down curiously and asked with a smile. She was about the same age as Hao Wanru and was a clever little girl. I am. Thank you for what you did just now. Xiao Wanru bowed to the brother and sister generously. It's okay. I just saw injustice on the road. Anyone who sees this kind of thing will stand up. Zhang Lanjue said proudly. He felt that this time his mother would definitely not scold him for making trouble and would definitely praise him. What are you thanking me for? You are so polite. Anyone who sees this kind of thing will say it. The nuns of the Yuhui nunnery are too much of a bully. Recently, I will also live in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time. If someone treats me like this, I can't bear it. Zhang Qilan curled her lips coquettishly and then took Xiao Wanru's hand. Can I live by your side then? I heard that staying for a long time is different from staying for a short time. The rooms for short-term stays were all grouped together and were usually arranged by the nunnery. Those that stayed for less than a month were considered as short-term stays, while those that stayed for longer usually stayed for more than a month. The nunnery could pick out some courtyards with more beautiful scenery for them to stay in. If they were not satisfied, they could renovate or add more at their own expense. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yanru were of this type. Basically, there were no nearby pilgrims as neighbors. The environment was mainly quiet and elegant, which was beneficial for the pilgrims who lived here for a long time to cultivate in peace. Well, I'll help you ask if there are other courtyards nearby. Xiao Wanru also had a good impression of this straightforward Miss Zhang, so she thought for a while and said with a smile. She had not been in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time, so she really didn't know the environment around her. It doesn't matter if you don't. Can I come to play with you when I live here in the future? Will it disturb your cultivation? Zhang Qilan didn't make things difficult for Xiao Wanru. She knew that she didn't have the final say in this matter, so she immediately suggested with a smile. Xiao Wanru, who was exquisite and beautiful, in front of her, made her eyes light up. It was the first time that she had seen such a beautiful girl, so she subconsciously wanted to be close to Xiao Wanru. Moreover, Xiao Wanru looked kind and nice. She didn't look like a miss from an aristocratic family who looked down on others. Although Prime Minister Zhang also had an extraordinary family background, he was not from a noble family in the capital city. The official system was somewhat different from the noble system. It paid more attention to ability than family background. Xiao Wanru's family background was very strange. She used to be the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion and belonged to the official system, but now she was from Duke Xing's mansion and the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. She was a real miss from an aristocratic family, and she was the most noble one. It won't disturb me. I still have some time after chanting scriptures for my parents every day, Xiao Wanru said softly. Okay, then it's a deal. I will definitely come to you then. Zhang Qilan didn't hide her joy and said with a smile. Zhang Lanjue wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He looked at his sister and then at Xiao Wanru. He poked his sister's waist with his arm. Brother, what's the matter? Zhang Qilan was talking enthusiastically, but she was interrupted. She turned her head and said unhappily. Zhang Lanjue silently mouthed at her. However, Zhang Qilan was in the joy of finding a close friend, so she didn't have any connection with her brother. After not understanding, she said loudly, Brother, just say what you want to say. How can I hear you so softly? Seeing that Xiao Wanru and her servant had turned around, Zhang Lanjue blushed. After stamping his feet, he gritted his teeth and said loudly, Censor, octagonal censor. What's wrong with the censor? Zhang Qilan didn't understand the meaning of Zhang Lanjue's words. She blinked and asked. Xiao Wanru understood and couldn't help but show a smile on her face. Just now, she saw the first young master Zhang looking at the censor with burning eyes outside the hall. At first glance, she knew that he liked the censor very much. That was why she picked up the incense burner and lured him over. She didn't expect him to be so persistent that he hadn't forgotten about it even now. My censor, my censor. Seeing that his sister was so stupid that she didn't understand, Zhang Lanjue couldn't help but pat her head. He could only hint again while peeping at Xiao Wanru. At that time, it was very chaotic. He didn't notice where the censor he liked was. It was not convenient to ask Xiao Wanru directly, so he wanted to remind his sister to ask. He didn't expect that she was so stupid, Zhang Lanjue thought angrily. Child Zhang, do you want to talk about the censor that was missing before? Xiao Wanru couldn't stand it anymore. After a laugh, she said bluntly. Yes, that censor. Where is it? Zhang Lanjue nodded excitedly. Finally, there was a smart one. The censor is under the largest Buddha platform in the side hall. First young Master Zhang can find it. Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Okay, thank you, fifth Miss Xiao. Zhang Lanjue couldn't stay any longer. After cupping his hands to Xiao Wanru, he picked up his robe and ran out quickly. The servant chased after him and called him. He didn't answer. His mind was full of the perfect censor that he was about to put together. At that time, it would be one of the collections that he could show off everywhere. Looking at her brother running away, Zhang Qilan felt ashamed. Sure enough, her brother was a playboy. Look at what he did, it made people feel ashamed. Fortunately, she was also a straightforward person. Although she felt ashamed, she did not feel much discomfort and got along well with Xiao Wanru. The two of them sat aside and talked while several maids worked together to clean up the hall. After cleaning up, Madame Zhang also sent someone over. She asked Zhang Qilan to go over to worship the ancestors again. Zhang Qilan then reluctantly got up and left. When Zhang Qilan returned to the main hall, she found that the religious ceremony had not begun at all. She was immediately unhappy. She pouted and went to the side hall to sit on a chair. She said coquettishly, "Mother, I was talking with fifth Miss Xiao. Why did you call me over in a hurry? We were talking happily." After saying that, he looked at Zhang Lanjue, who had his head down, and immediately knew that his elder brother had been scolded by his mother. He immediately put away the little emotions in his heart and became careful. You'd better not get involved in the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion. Madame Zhang looked at the brother and sister and frowned. She frowned and said, "Mother, it is obviously the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery who bullied me. If we let them bully me like this, will I be bullied by them the next time I live here?" Zhang Qilan took Madame Zhang's hand and shook it unwillingly. Her words made Madame Zhang fall silent for a while. Putting herself in Madame Zhang's shoes, all parents felt sorry for her. Thinking that the fifth Miss Xiao was observing mourning for her father at such a young age, and it was said that she was forced to leave Duke Xing's mansion. It seemed that no one liked her. Madame Zhang couldn't help sighing softly. This girl was a pitiful person. "Mother, fifth Miss Xiao is very nice. She looks younger than me. She is thin and pitiful." Thinking of Xiao Wanru, who was dressed in a loose black robe, Zhang Qilan felt more and more sorry for her. The loose black robe covered her like a wide cloth bag. But even so, she was still good-looking. Okay, I don't object to your relationship with her. I just want you to be careful. Don't meddle in the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion." Madame Zhang said helplessly to her daughter. Daughters were always spoiled. Madame Zhang did spoil her daughter, but her son was raised as tough as he could. Fortunately, her daughter was sensible and did not become spoiled. Although Madame Zhang did not know the inside story of this matter, she always felt that it would not be simple. Otherwise, why would a miss from an aristocratic family, who had been found, be forced to go up the mountain without the protection of her biological parents? "Mother, is it all right? If there is nothing else, I will go out." When Zhang Lanjue saw that his sister had coaxed his mother, he immediately beamed with joy. He stood up and shook his robe. He had found the incense burner, but he had not had time to look at it. At this time, while the religious ceremony had not begun, he could enjoy it. Stop! Madame Zhang's face darkened and she shouted at him. Mother! Zhang Lanjue was pitiful. He looked back. You stay here and don't go anywhere. The nunnery is full of women. Don't offend anyone. Madame Zhang said. Mother, you don't believe that nonsense, do you? Zhang Lanjue felt that he had been wronged. Where did this young and beautiful nun come from? He had taken a fancy to her and offended her, and then caused trouble. Shut up. Madame Zhang's hand slammed on the table. It was a rumor, and she had also heard it. But later, according to Prime Minister Zhang's words, it seemed that it was not a rumor, but true. Madame Zhang did not want her son to encounter such a thing. Her son's temperament was not very good. It was safest to keep him by her side. What's wrong? A leisurely voice came from the meditation room. Chapter 474. Go. You're the one who's narrow-minded. No wonder Fifth Miss is angry. The voice in the meditation room became more and more leisurely, with a sense of transcendence, which could wash away the dirt in one's soul. Just from the voice alone, he could tell that the person inside was an expert who cultivated in tranquility and in action. Master, it's clear that they messed it up and deliberately framed me. Master, please testify for me. Huiqing was kneeling at the door. Her face was full of tears as she propped herself up in anger. Silly child, why are you talking about this? Go and sweep the floor. Don't do this again. In the meditation room, Master Pu Shan's voice became low, and he was chanting in a low voice. This meant that he no longer cared about Huiqing's matter. Senior sister, get up. Master has never cared about this kind of thing. Hui Ming came out from a dark corner at the side of the house and pulled Huiqing up to persuade her. First Miss is the master's favorite disciple. Her paintings have some of the master's true essence. Originally, she could have stayed on the mountain to learn better. Even if she couldn't make the master more famous, she could have continued to learn the master's painting skills. But because of this Fifth Miss, First Miss was forced to go down the mountain. How could she still have the face to stay here? Huiqing stood up with a face full of anger and resentment, but she did not dare to raise her voice for fear that Master Pu Shan would be angry if she heard it. She and Hui Ming were both apprentices of Master Pu Shan. They had been friends for many years, so of course they would think of their master in everything. They also got along well with First Miss Xiao. Suddenly, the Fifth Miss of the Xiao family came here one day, and the First Miss Xiao, who had gotten along well with them, had to go down the mountain because of her reputation. The two of them vented their anger on Xiao Wanru. That was why they were making things difficult for him. Senior sister, our arms can't twist the thighs. Let's wait and see first. When there's a chance in the future, we'll help eldest miss. Hui Ming saw that her voice had unconsciously become louder and was so frightened that she hurriedly reached out to cover her mouth as she whispered. Huiqing nodded. A gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. Wasn't he supposed to sweep the floor for a year? It was fine. She still had 2 years. Gritting his teeth, he took another look at his master's meditation room, and then retreated with light steps. Even if she was filled with resentment, she could not disturb her master's peaceful cultivation. Master, Fifth Miss Xiao said that she wanted to use First Miss's quiet room. Hui Ming took 2 steps forward and respectfully reported to the Zen room. He felt that the Fifth Miss Xiao was really overestimating herself and dared to make such a request. Everyone knew that the First Miss Xiao was the person the master valued the most. Although she was not the direct disciple, the master's love for the First Miss Xiao had long surpassed the relationship between the master and the disciple. At this moment, the First Miss Xiao had just left, and she made such a request to the abbess. She really thought that she was so shameless. After the master refused, he would directly report it to the Fifth Miss Xiao and see if she was embarrassed. Let her use it. A low and slow voice came from the meditation room calmly. Master. Huiming's eyes widened. Even Huiqing, who had walked to the entrance of the courtyard, stopped in her tracks and turned around in shock. Neither of them had expected this answer. Master. Huiqing murmured. You can leave now. Don't make too much trouble with 5th Miss Xiao in the future. The voice in the meditation room became more and more distant. Huiqing and Huiming looked at each other. The master had really given up the 1st Miss Xiao's silence room. Xiao Wanru went to Xiao Yenru's courtyard a few days later. The two courtyards were far away from each other, but there was a straight line to pass through. This road was against a high wall on one side. The distance from one end to the other was the distance between Xiao Wanru's current courtyard and Xiao Yenru's former courtyard. It was a very high wall, but it was not the courtyard wall of the Yuhui nunnery. There was only a small side door on such a long wall. Yu Jie deliberately kept an eye on this small side door. Basically, it was only opened for a while in the morning, and no one else came out. Only some daily consumables such as vegetables were sent in. There was someone inside the door. They were also nuns in black clothes, but they looked much more delicate than the ones outside. Yu Jie even saw a few of them who were particularly beautiful. This should be the place where the former emperor's and some palace maids who served them at that time lived. The former emperor's only son was Chu Luqian. When Chu Luqian was born, the former emperor was already in poor health. Xiao Wanru sometimes wondered why he didn't turn his son into a girl at that time. If so, wouldn't all the trouble be gone? At that time, the emperor had already held the power. The former empress, who was pregnant, could no longer control the imperial palace and could only hide in a corner of the palace. It was not difficult at all to kill the child she gave birth to or turn the child into a princess. Then why did he keep Chu Luqian? Although he was in poor health, as long as he existed, this matter would not stop. The rumor that the emperor had robbed his nephew of the throne would continue to spread. Was it really the emperor's kindness that he didn't use the method to solve the problem once and for all? The former emperor only had one son, and the other of the former emperor all lived in this high wall. Fortunately, it was said that the former emperor did not have many s. After observing for a few days and figuring out the pattern, Yu Jie stopped monitoring the side door. On her way to Xiao Yenru's silence room, Xiao Wanru passed by the side door. She looked at the small side door, which was about the height of a person and more than 1 meter wide, and then looked at the high walls which were like palace walls. After a moment of silence, she continued to walk forward. Miss, there are a few nuns living in the courtyard outside. They are the nuns who guard the small door here. Yu Jie reported the news she had heard to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru nodded calmly and continued to walk forward. The door of the courtyard where Xiao Yenru lived before was closed. Yu Jie stepped forward and opened the door with the key. Since Pushun Nun agreed, the key of the courtyard had been sent to Yu Jie. She pushed the door open and found that the courtyard was very clean. It could be seen that someone cleaned it on weekdays. The courtyard was larger than Xiao Wanru's previous one. Several main rooms were arranged in a row, with wing rooms on the side. It was similar to the courtyard where Xiao Wanru lived in Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The other rooms were tightly closed, except for the second room on the right, which was slightly closed. It should be Xiao Yenru's so-called silence room. She pushed the door open and found that the floor inside was all made of the wood of Manchurian willow, which was a bit ancient in color. There was a window on the wall at the back, which occupied most of the wall. When she drew the curtain, she saw a large expanse of sunshine coming in. Outside the window were the scattered mountains, which were of different heights and heights. Just looking out of the window, she felt relaxed and happy. No wonder all the misses who came to the Yuhui nunnery in the last life tried their best to take a look at Xiao Yenru's silence room. Painting here could not only make one's soul quiet, but also make one's heart peaceful and full of inspiration. Miss, it's so beautiful here. It's much more beautiful than your room. Yu Jie couldn't help sighing. Is it set on the edge of the cliff? Chu Lu tilted her head and looked down from the window. It should be. It's not easy to build it here. This kind of place can't be built casually. The nunnery will usually leave this kind of place for pilgrims to enjoy the scenery. Once this courtyard is occupied, others can't see the scenery in front of them. Yujie felt that this was a loss for the Yuhui nunnery. This courtyard has not been built for a long time. Xiao Wanru looked around, walked a few steps slowly, came to the window, and said, it should be specially built by Xiao Yenru for her to live here. The Yuhui nunnery is too obedient to the first Miss Xiao. She just came here to live for a few months and fish for fame. But the Yuhui nunnery gave up such a big scenery to her. She doesn't think it's a loss. Yujie curled her lips and deeply felt that the first Miss Xiao was luxurious under the low key. Everyone thought that the first Miss Xiao went to the mountains to cultivate. Looking at the scenery, Yujie felt that she would not feel bad even if she cultivated for a few years, let alone a few months. Yujie, who grew up in the mountains, yearned for this kind of life very much. There's nothing to lose. I think the first Miss Xiao has given me a lot of benefits. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, with a trace of darkness at the bottom of her eyes. In the last life, Xiao Yenru did treat the Yuhui nunnery very well. After entering the imperial palace, she also rewarded the Yuhui nunnery from time to time, and even extended her kindness to the former emperor's s. In the last life, Xiao Wanru heard a rumor related to Xiao Yenru's silence room, but she didn't know whether it was true or not. But it didn't matter. From now on, this place would belong to her. Xiao Wanru, who lived on the mountain, began to live a quiet life. She lived a very ordinary but fulfilling life. Every day, she read scriptures to her parents and embroidered like ordinary girls from aristocratic families. Sometimes, she learned medicine from Mingqiu Nun. When she was in Jiangzhou, she was too hasty to learn well. Sometimes, she walked a long distance to the silence room to paint. Xiao Wanru had been able to draw portraits for beauties in her last life. She was also very talented in painting, and she was very good at it. She also liked painting very much. In such a quiet environment, she also had a good feeling. There was no sun and moon in the mountains. Gradually, the fifth Miss Xiao and the rumors about the fifth Miss Xiao disappeared in other rumors. There had been no lack of other rumors in the capital city. Now, the most popular one was the marriage of the first Miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The first Miss Qin had a bad reputation. She was going to get married. In order to climb the social ladder, she kicked her ex-fiancé away. After that, she engaged the current one. Then she tried to seduce Prince Cheng. After she failed, she tried to pretend to be the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing. Then she was driven out. This time, only a red sedan chair was carried from Ningyuan Army General's mansion to Duke Yang's mansion. Originally, only a few close relatives and friends were invited, but no one knew that the news had spread out somehow. On the day of the wedding, after Qin Yuru's sedan chair was carried to Duke Yang's mansion, many onlookers on both sides threw rotten eggs and cabbages. Chapter 475. Mother, do I have to go, too? Xiao Yenru looked at Madame of Duke Xing with displeasure. She frowned slightly and looked a little arrogant. But even so, she was still a very beautiful Mississippi. Under her willowy eyebrows, her eyes were leisurely. Although she had a little arrogance of an aristocratic family, she was not the kind that was very annoying. People would even feel that the woman in front of her was beautiful with a little elegance, very beautiful and attractive. It was no wonder that everyone said that the first Miss Xiao was talented and beautiful. Not only was she talented, but she was also very beautiful. She was a rare beauty. The Empress has issued a decree. You have to go at this age. You were in the Yuhui nunnery before, but now you have to go after you go down the mountain. Madame of Duke Xing said helplessly and reached out to press her forehead. It's that bitch who made a fuss about observing mourning for 3 years. She forced you down the mountain and messed up the good situation. Madame of Duke Xing certainly paid attention to the prince's consort selection. Not only did she pay attention to it, but she also felt that her daughter was very likely to be selected. But she was afraid that she would be selected at this time. At this time, it was the heart of the struggle. Her daughter left before to avoid the heart of the struggle for a period of time. If she married Prince Zhou's mansion, what if Prince Yu succeeded? If she married Prince Yu, what if Prince Zhou eventually became the emperor? Of course, Xiao Yanru meant that she would not marry anyone at this time. She would rather be an old lady. Before the situation was clear, she had been living on the mountain in the name of learning painting. Others would only say that she was indifferent to fame and fortune. When other misses from aristocratic families were gorgeously dressed, she lived a quiet and inactive life alone on the mountain. Anyone would think highly of her. When the situation became clear in the future, with her reputation and wisdom, as well as her relationship with Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou, it would be very easy for her to marry anyone she wanted. It did not matter if she was not the legal wife after getting married. With the strength of herself and Duke Xing's mansion, Xiao Yanru felt that it was only a matter of time before she became the empress of the next world. Even if she waited until she was 20 years old to get married, she felt that it would not be a problem. 6 years was enough to make everything clear, but now it was not the best time. She did not want to appear in front of others. If he appeared in front of people early on, he would lose that noble and mysterious feeling, and he would lose a lot of benefits in the future. She only said that she would stay on the mountain for more than half a year. If the situation was still unclear, she could stay there again. She only said that learning painting was difficult and that she needed to put more effort into it. Unexpectedly, it was ruined by Xiao Wanru, who came out of nowhere. That girl is too cunning. Mother, didn't I tell you to be careful of her? You even let the eldest miss of Qin's mansion restrain her. How could you let her recognize her as a relative peacefully? Xiao Yanru said with an unhappy look. I didn't expect that this bitch would be so cunning. I didn't pay attention to her for a while, so I was driven here by her. Madame of Duke Xing frowned and argued. Looking at his daughter's face, he felt a little guilty. Although Xiao Yanru was her daughter, after her daughter became sensible, Madame of Duke Xing always felt a little flustered when facing her daughter. Compared with her, her daughter was too sensible and capable. Even Duke Xing, who had always looked down on women, also praised his daughter. Her daughter was perfect in all aspects. No miss from an aristocratic family in the whole capital city could compare with her. Not only was she beautiful, but she also behaved appropriately. Every step was planned early. Well, a mother would also feel inferior when facing such a daughter. Xiao Yanru leaned back on the couch and said with a hint of sarcasm on her elegant face, Mother, don't quibble. You can't get away from this matter. Don't take action if you are not sure. Once you take action, you must hit the target at once, and you can't get yourself involved. Mother, I think you have been Madame of Duke Xing for a long time and even lost the basic sense of crisis. She raised her eyebrows with a hint of iciness, which made her look even more noble. This kind of aura made Madame of Duke Xing feel very stressed. The noble aura of her daughter was stronger than that of others in the palace. Only the aura of the Empress and the Empress Dowager could compare with it. Does that mean he's going to have a daughter? She would definitely strive for the last position. Thinking of this, Madame of Duke Xing felt warm in her heart and became more obedient to her daughter. This matter is indeed my fault. I thought it was just a little girl and nothing serious. I didn't expect things to change so drastically. In the end, I couldn't suppress it anymore. Your father even blamed me for burning your brother's courtyard. Even if I wanted to burn this girl to death, I would never burn your brother's courtyard. Thinking of this, Madame of Duke Xing felt that her heart still ached at this moment. If she found out who set the fire to her collection, her courtyard, and all her efforts, she would definitely not spare him. Mother, since you don't want to give up that courtyard, you shouldn't have let her live there. She has just entered the mansion, so it's normal for you to have an ordinary relationship with her. There's no need to think too much about fishing for fame. Xiao Yanru's voice was very soft and pleasant. If one didn't hear the content clearly, it would make one feel like bathing in the spring breeze. However, the content of her words hit the nail on the head and criticized Madame of Duke Xing, without showing any mercy to her as a mother. Madame of Duke Xing's face turned as red as blood and she argued, "I was wrong at that time. I thought she was just a bumpkin from Jiangzhou. She's just a bumpkin. But it turns out that you were wrong. You are the bumpkin." Xiao Yanru frowned slightly and looked increasingly unhappy. Her original plan was very good and she was praised by her grandmother and father. But now it was ruined by her mother. Xiao Yanru felt that even if she had a good temper, she couldn't help being angry at this time. But... Madame of Duke Xing was embarrassed. "Mother, there's no buts. If you think you can't deal with it, just tell father directly. There's no need to say so many buts to postpone it. My elder brother is coming back. If the courtyard is burned down, he will not be happy. Think about how to explain it to him." Xiao Yanru waved her hand and began to drive her away unhappily. "I'll explain it to your elder brother. Your father. I can't discuss this with him. I don't know what he thinks. Maybe he will." Madame of Duke Xing said. "Mother, don't explain anymore. Is it interesting to be jealous all day long? What happens to my father and that woman has nothing to do with you. Is it worth it for you to miss a crazy woman for so many years? Did she make you lose control and ruin the big plan? Mother, are you really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? Why do you have to be jealous of a crazy woman? No wonder my father likes to see you less and less now." Xiao Yanru picked up the tea on the table coldly. After taking a sip, she said with a faint smile in her eyes. Being ridiculed by her own daughter like this, Madame of Duke Xing couldn't bear it at this time no matter how well-bred she was. Xiao Yanru's words really hit her heart. You don't understand this kind of thing, and you don't have to defend your father. It's not a matter of jealousy, mother, forget it. It won't make sense even if I explain it to you. Just tell them that I caught a cold when I came down from the mountain. Let the doctors in the mansion take a look at me, and then let the doctors outside the mansion take a look at me." Xiao Yanru became impatient and raised her eyebrows. Being ridiculed by her daughter again and again, Madame of Duke Xing felt sullen. She couldn't breathe it out, but she couldn't ignore the business at this time, so she pretended not to hear the first half of Xiao Yanru's words clearly. She calmed down and said with a hollow smile, "It's okay to ask the doctor in our mansion to tell the doctor that you are sick, but I'm afraid it won't work for the doctor outside the mansion. If someone told the doctor that she was sick but was not sick at the banquet held in the palace, it would be a crime of deceiving the emperor." Although the banquet was only for the selection of concubines, and it was said that it was just a formality, it was the empress's intention anyway. If she really disobeyed the empress's intention, it could be a big or small matter. "Mother, you really don't have any ideas. Find a few servant girls, pour a few basins of water on them, and let them stay for a night without changing clothes. See who is the most seriously sick, carry them to me and let the doctor have a look at them. That's it." Xiao Yanru said casually. In such a cold winter, it was cold to wear heavy clothes. If they poured a few basins of water on them and stayed for a night, they might die of illness. However, the lives of a few servant girls didn't matter. Hearing her words, Madame of Duke Xing's eyes lit up, and she immediately nodded repeatedly. Good. You have a good idea. I'll ask someone to do it now. Don't you think it's too early? Mother, the sun is still shining. When you do this kind of thing, can't you do it at night when few people see you? Xiao Yanru felt that she really couldn't continue to talk to her mother. It was totally not the same trick. No wonder she lost to a bumpkin who had just arrived in the capital and had to go down the mountain. In this way, the bumpkin was only a little better than her mother. Steamed bun was only stronger than his mother by a little or two. She didn't care about those 2 points. Ignoring Madame of Duke Xing, who was smiling, Xiao Yanru was thinking about whether she should meet Prince Yu first or Prince Zhou in private. Of course, the so-called meeting definitely didn't mean that she deliberately went to see him. She had to see him inadvertently and show her helplessness. Only by cooperating with both sides could she snatch the position of Empress in the end. She could afford to wait for 3 or 4 years. With her beauty and talent, no matter who sat on the throne of the crown prince's consort, they would not be her opponent. However, only by knowing yourself and your enemy could she win the final victory. She would not fight a battle that she was not sure of. After thinking it through, she sat up, stood up, and walked to the window. A servant girl had already ground the ink for her. She picked up the writing brush and thought about the names of several aristocratic misses who were likely to become Princess Yu and Princess Zhou. She wrote them down one by one, and then carefully analyzed their shortcomings and strengths. Only after understanding these could she make a plan. Chapter 476. The Grand Concubine Selection Banquet was soon over. None of the misses were chosen. Many misses went there with hope and came back disappointed. It was said that some of them cried at home and couldn't go out. Because it was said that no one suitable was chosen this time, the Empress Dowager and the Empress planned to choose a suitable one in a few years. That was to say, none of the misses of aristocratic families of the right age were chosen. The result of not being chosen was that they would miss the opportunity to marry the princes. Although 1 or 2 of them might stay, most of them had no hope and could only find another marriage partner. There were some young ladies from aristocratic families who had not been engaged until now. Of course, their target was the princes. Now, most of them could only marry someone else. Hence, after the banquet, there was a wave of engagement and intimacy. Since they knew that there was no hope, of course, they couldn't wait any longer. Most of them chose to marry someone else. Even those who didn't want to marry were forced by their families to marry someone else. The ones who stayed were the younger ones. However, some mansions deliberately waited for a while. Since the imperial examination in spring was coming, they could afford to wait. There had always been a saying that the candidates who failed the imperial examination would find a son-in-law. Many people had their eyes on the imperial examination in spring. The imperial examination in spring began in the expectation of many people, and then the results were released. Those who passed the imperial examination were very excited, while those who failed were depressed and lamented their bad luck. The top scorer and the third runner-up were all acquaintances. Just as Xiao Wanru remembered, Qi Tianyu got the third runner-up on the day he rode on a horse to parade in the street. Xiao Wanru got the news, which made her feel anxious and listless all day. She took Yujie to Xiao Yanru's silence room. After entering the yard, she suddenly stopped when she pushed the door. "Come in." A light and elegant voice came from inside the door. Her hand silently pressed on the door. After a pause, she slowly pushed it open and waved her hand to tell Yujie not to come in. Yujie also heard who was in the silence room and relaxed. She looked at Xiao Xuanzi, who turned around the corner, walked over consciously and waited outside with Xiao Xuanzi. Chu Luqian sat lazily on the mat spread over the window, leaned against the small table on it, and said without turning his head, "Come here." There was a pot of tea and 2 teacups on the table. Both cups of tea had been poured, and the rising smoke made his handsome face more serious. It seemed that Chu Luqian in front of him was a little different. They hadn't seen each other for a while. Mingxiu Nun was now helping Chu Luqian recuperate, but she often went to Prince Chen's mansion. It was said that Prince Chen's health was getting worse, and he almost didn't go out of the mansion. In the past, he could go to the palace to see the Empress Dowager from time to time. Now, it was basically the Empress Dowager who really missed him and went to Prince Chen's mansion from the side door of the palace gate to see him. All kinds of rumors secretly said that Prince Chen might die soon. Now he was bedridden and couldn't get up. It was estimated that he didn't have much time left. At present, Prince Chen, who was said to be terminally ill and couldn't get up, was leaning against the table beside the mat at this time, looking leisurely and contented. Looking at his face, Xiao Wanru felt that although he looked sick and weak, his lips were as pale as ever, and he looked like a beautiful young man in an ink landscape painting. He was in good spirits. As for his gloomy face, she didn't know who had offended him. Xiao Wanru walked to the tea table in front of the mat and sat down. She picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. Then she slowly raised her eyes and said, "Your Highness, shouldn't you stay in the mansion to recuperate?" No matter who he wanted to confuse, since he had done so, it was naturally inconvenient for him to go out. If it fell into the eyes of someone with ulterior motives, it would be another plot. My conditions suddenly changed today, so I asked someone to carry me directly to Mingqiu Nun. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on Xiao Wanru, and he said with a gentle smile. Xiao Wanru was wearing the black robe that she had been wearing since she entered the Yuhui nunnery. She didn't put on any makeup, and her unfashionable clothes, beautiful hair, and home-like appearance made her jade-like little face more delicate and creamy, and her clear watery eyes were like flowing spring water. She was light and elegant, with a kind of delicate charm, and there was a girl's coquettish charm in her eyes. They hadn't seen Xiao Wanru for a month, but she became more and more attractive. "Your Highness, why are you suddenly here?" Xiao Wanru asked angrily. Just now, she was in a state of depression because she heard that Qi Tianyu had won the third place again. At this time, she picked up the cup in her hand and played with it for a while, showing a bit of bitterness. Could it be that the result of the last life couldn't be changed? Qi Tianyu was still the third place, and his ranking didn't change. Could it be that she couldn't escape the tragic fate of the last life? No matter what she did, the result would be the same, right? Xiao Wanru, do you know what a woman values the most? Chu Luqian shook his sleeves and asked casually. Xiao Wanru didn't react for a moment. She stared at him with her eyes wide open and repeated, "What is the most important?" "The most important thing is a woman's virtue. Zhuozhuo won't forget that you are in the same boat with me now, right?" Chu Luqian said with a smile, and the teacup in his hand fell on the table. It was not heavy, but it inexplicably felt like colliding with gold and stone. "Your Highness, what do you mean?" Xiao Wanru didn't understand why he said such a thing, and it sounded like he was accusing her of something. "I mean, even if there was something between you and Qi Tianyu in the past, you should break it off with me now. How can my woman be intimate with another man?" Chu Liuchen's face turned cold, and the gentle smile on his face immediately disappeared, replaced by a kind of coldness and gloom. Xiao Wanru was stunned to see him change his face directly in front of her, and she even forgot the other meanings in his words. The next moment, she sensed that the stool was kicked away by Chu Luqian, and then her hand was pulled by Chu Luqian and fell down. Xiao Wanru was shocked. She hurriedly reached out, but found that the strength on her wrist was so amazing that she couldn't resist it at all. Then she fell down on the table. Chu Luqian gathered his sleeves and covered her whole body. His handsome face hung right above Xiao Wanru. He squinted his eyes slightly. From Xiao Wanru's angle, she really couldn't see his expression and what he meant. "Your Highness, what did you say?" "I'm not familiar with Qi Tianyu." She blinked her eyes and suddenly understood what Chu Luqian meant. She was so angry that her face turned red, and she pushed Chu Luqian hard and said, "If there was anyone in this world that Xiao Wanru didn't want to get involved with, it was Qi Tianyu." As long as she thought that Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru colluded with each other to harm her in the last life, she couldn't restrain her anger. Compared with Chu Liuchen's strength, she was not at the same level at all. Chu Luqian hung on her without moving and looked at the petite Xiao Wanru with inexplicable eyes. "Since you're not familiar with him, why are you restless for a day because he got the third rank? Do you want to go down the mountain to see him parade on the horse?" Chu Luqian reached out his hand and pushed her wrist, which had been pinched just now, to the top of her head and said with a sneer. Xiao Wanru's wrist was pinched painfully. She tried hard to break free, but failed. She became furious at once and glared at Chu Luqian angrily. "Your Highness, how did you come to such a conclusion? When Qi Tianyu and I were in Jiangzhou, we were already in a life-or-death situation. How could I be happy for him getting the third rank and even want to see him now?" Your Highness, why don't you think that I want to kill him more now? What she said was not harsh words, but her real thoughts. Her bright watery eyes were covered with hatred, and she stretched out her legs to kick Chu Luchan a few times. The feeling of being pinched and unable to move was just like when she was trapped in a swamp in the last life and let others plot against her fate. She was in a bad mood today. She had been thinking about Qi Tianyu and whether she would end up with her head separated from her waist in the future. With her hands pinched and her legs pressed by Chu Liuchen's, she suddenly collapsed after a day of tension. She only felt that the pinch in front of her was her fate, and she could only escape if she broke free. She struggled hard with both hands and feet and stretched out her legs to kick Chu Liuchen. Her mind was in a mess, and she only felt that all kinds of sporadic fragments exploded in her mind like fireworks, breaking into pieces, and in each piece, there was herself struggling in pain. What's wrong with you? Sensing Xiao Wanru's abnormality, Chu Luchen stretched out a hand and pressed the corner of Xiao Wanru's mouth hard. Xiao Wanru opened her mouth, bit one of his fingers hard, and bit it hard. Chu Luchen frowned in pain and flicked Xiao Wanru's lower jaw with his thumb and middle finger. Xiao Wanru felt the pain at the corner of her mouth and subconsciously loosened her mouth. She still stared at Chu Luchen with her bloody eyes, a little confused and crazy. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on her little face, which was as white as snow, and he could tell that there was something wrong with her. His slender fingers slid down from her lower jaw and fell on her slender neck. Her neck was so thin that it could almost be broken with a pinch. His fingers pinched her neck fiercely, and the sharp sense of suffocation made Xiao Wanru breathe heavily. Her body slowly softened, and her consciousness was blurred. She almost fainted. As soon as Chu Luchen loosened his grip, Xiao Wanru felt like coming back to life. Her eyes were in a mess, and she slowly gathered Chu Liuchen's face. This time, there were no other fragments, only Chu Luchen. Xiao Wanru coughed hard, and the force on her arm was finally loosened. She pulled out a hand to press her chest and coughed violently, while gasping for fresh air. At that moment, she really sensed Chu Liuchen's killing intent. This made her sober. The person in front of her was Prince Chen. Chapter 477. Do you want to murder me? Chu Luchen gently pressed his thin lips against Xiao Wanru's cheek and said slowly. After that, he stuck out his tongue and licked her white and tender face in an extremely gloomy voice. I didn't. Xiao Wanru's eyes became clear again. She looked at Chu Luchen breathlessly. She just wanted to break free from his restraint just now, and everything after that was almost subconscious. Seeing that the blood in Xiao Wanru's eyes had dissipated, Chu Luchen glanced at her coldly, lay down beside Xiao Wanru, and snorted, "You dare not." He reached out and half-held Xiao Wanru in his arms. Tell me, what's the matter with Qi Tianyu? I can't ruin things because of your relationship with Qi Tianyu. Xiao Wanru closed her eyes and felt dizzy. The back of her head twitched from time to time, and she subconsciously reached out to rub it. He has nothing to do with me. You saw it when we were in Jiangzhou. It was him and Qin Yuru who plotted against me. How could I have anything to do with him? Xiao Wanru calmed down and explained. A big hand pressed against the back of her head and rubbed the place where she had rubbed just now. I heard that when you were in Qin's mansion, your two families intended to unite by marriage. At that time, it was Qi Tianyu and you, right? That's right. Feeling that the back of her head was a little comfortable because of Chu Liuchen's forceful rub, Xiao Wanru said. It couldn't be hidden from others, especially Chu Luchen. If your two families didn't have such a bad relationship before, how could Qin Huayong marry you to Qi Tianyu again? Chu Liuchen's voice became gentle. Although Xiao Wanru didn't open her eyes, she knew that he should be very calm at this time. She couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. This prince really changed his attitude faster than turning the page of a book. At that time, General Qin had always thought highly of Qi Tianyu. I'm afraid that he thought Qi Tianyu was indeed a good son-in-law, so he thought so. But it was just a thought. At that time, I told Madame Shui that I was not willing to marry him. Xiao Wanru said. Since she had agreed to be Chu Liuchen's shield, she certainly wouldn't ruin his plan. As for Chu Liuchen's question, she also felt that it was reasonable. After all, she was tied to him now, and even the Empress Dowager had fallen behind. If there were some bad rumors about her, Chu Liuchen would be responsible for it in the end. No wonder the prince was so angry. Anyway, no one can decide on my marriage now. In order to comfort Chu Liuchen, Xiao Wanru deliberately added such a sentence, indicating that she would not be a burden to Chu Liuchen. In fact, Xiao Wanru felt that she had to thank Chu Liuchen. While she became Chu Liuchen's shield, her marriage was no longer arranged by Duke Xing's mansion at will. No matter what Madame of Duke Xing wanted to do and whom she wanted to marry, her marriage was not something she could interfere with. Since the Empress Dowager had registered it, the Emperor should have known about it. In addition, Duke Xing's mansion could no longer control him with his marriage because of his grandmother. This made Xiao Wanru breathe a sigh of relief in her heart. Without the control of her marriage, she would be much less passive. In this respect, Chu Liuchen was also her shield. It's good that it has nothing to do with you. I heard that Qi Tanhua is a very nostalgic person. Even though he was wronged and dumped by the current young Madame of Duke Yong, he did not speak ill of the young Madame of Duke Yong in front of others. Chu Liuchen glanced sideways at Xiao Wanru, who still closed her eyes and frowned tightly, and said in a lazy manner. Fishing for compliments. Xiao Wanru snorted coldly and did not hide her disdain. She pursed her red lips with a bit of cold sarcasm. Speaking of fishing for compliments, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion can be regarded as a very capable one. Chu Liuchen felt satisfied and continued to massage the back of Xiao Wanru's head. Although he used force, he was very gentle. Xiao Yanru is not simple. You have to be careful. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and decided to remind Chu Liuchen. In the last life, Xiao Yanru entered the imperial harem and became the emperor's favorite concubine. This matter must have a direct relationship with Chu Liuchen. Although she did not know why Xiao Yanru entered the imperial harem and became the emperor's favorite concubine in the last life, with her character, she should want to be the princess of those princes and the empress in the future most. Before the empress held a banquet to choose concubines for those princes, the first Miss Xiao said that she was ill and refused to attend. It was said that she was seriously ill and even invited imperial physicians from the imperial palace to have a look. They all said that the first Miss Xiao was very ill. It was said that when she was in the Yuhui nunnery, she devoted herself to learning painting and did not have a good rest, so she got sick. Seeing Xiao Wanru's frown a little, Chu Liuchen put his hand down, reached out to hold her in his arms and let her head rest on his arm. Xiao Wanru wanted to stand up and push him away, but his hand was so strong that she could not push him away. She was covered with sweat and the back of her head, which had just recovered a little, had a headache again, so she simply lay down and did not move. She did not expect that such a sick and fragile person, who seemed to be so strong. Who does Xiao Yanru like? Xiao Wanru still closed her eyes and asked casually. She gave up struggling and did not dare to shake her head again, for fear that she would feel pain again. Anyone can like her. Chu Liuchen said. Xiao Wanru understood his words, but she suddenly wondered why Xiao Yanru entered the imperial harem in the last life. Obviously, entering the imperial harem to become the emperor's concubine should not be considered by her. After becoming the emperor's favorite concubine, no matter how favored she was, it was impossible for her to be the empress. After the empress gave birth to Prince Shou, her status was very stable, which could not be shaken by a favorite concubine. Even if Xiao Yanru was lucky enough to give birth to a son, it was basically impossible for this son to be recognized by the emperor and even make everyone think that this son was better than other princes. In the last life, the sixth prince, who was strangled by Xiao Yanru, was actually not born by Xiao Yanru, but by a palace maid. Later, the palace maid died in childbirth, leaving such a child, who was adopted by Xiao Yanru and raised by her. In the end, the death of the sixth prince also pushed her to the road of death. If I don't marry, they can't marry either. It's useless no matter how much they like her. Chu Luqin said naturally. His words made Xiao Wanru silent for a while. After a long while, she asked tentatively, "Won't you choose a prince's concubine after this time?" "Not for the time being. Let's wait at least 2 or 3 years." Chu Luqin said casually. Of course, he would not want those princes to get help. Before he thought it through, he did not want them to get married with the support of the princess's concubine. "If you do this, will others find out?" Xiao Wanru said after a moment of silence. She knew that Chu Luqin had done something in this matter. Previously, the Empress Dowager and the Empress were eager to choose a concubine. "Not only me, but also Prince Cheng is not willing to do it. Although he doesn't marry, of course, he doesn't want others to marry." Chu Luqin twitched the corner of his mouth. Although his smile was gentle, his eyes were deep and cold. Therefore, there were many people in this matter, and each of them was extraordinary. Some were in a hurry to get married, and some deliberately sabotaged. This trap had been set long ago. It became quiet in the room. After a long while, Xiao Wanru suddenly said, "Your Highness, you can find a princess with a prominent family background. In this way, you will also have a future, won't you?" Even if other princes could not get married, Xiao Wanru believed that Chu Luqin could still marry if he wanted to. This was not a problem for him. She was really just a shield. The only function was that Chu Luqin had a confirmed princess. In the future, the Empress Dowager and the Empress did not need to bother him with this matter, but it was of no substantial help to him. Even though Xiao Wanru was no longer the former Qin Wanru, she had a strong backing. However, this so-called powerful backing was just for show. Everyone in Duke Xing's mansion disliked her very much. Everyone knew that Duke Xing's mansion would not stand behind her. They just maintained a superficial relationship with her. Even at a critical moment, this superficial relationship would be torn apart. Her maternal grandma cared about her very much. She was also noble, but she was just noble and had no real power. If Chu Luqin needed her to put in a good word for him in front of the Empress Dowager, Chu Liuchen's words would be more useful in front of the Empress Dowager. From these aspects, Xiao Wanru felt that Chu Luqin still needed a princess with a real backing. "I don't need a backing. I just need a woman who doesn't hold me back." Chu Luqin reached out and patted Xiao Wanru's head. This time, he patted the place where he had massaged for her before. She immediately shrank her neck in pain, and the place seemed to ache again. This person was so bad. "With a backing, Your Highness, you can naturally do whatever you want." Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes. She didn't want to argue with him. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were both working hard to find a strong and powerful wife. Why didn't Chu Luqin find one? This was what she couldn't figure out. Obviously, he was also ambitious. No matter how weak he pretended to be, no matter how innocent he was full of ambition in Xiao Wanru's eyes. Otherwise, he could not have defeated all his opponents in the last life and reascended to the position of the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace. If I want to get support, do I still have to show my sincerity? Chu Luqin reached out and patted Xiao Wanru again. It was the same place. Xiao Wanru reached out to cover the back of her head, which ached from time to time. She didn't know how she had offended Prince Chen. Of course it is necessary. Only when you and the princess are together can you get the support from the princess's family. Are there only one miss in the mansion of these misses from aristocratic families? Maybe there are other misses in their mansion who are married to my eldest brother and second brother, and they may not necessarily support me. If I expose my shortcomings, I'm afraid I won't know how I die. Chu Luqin snorted coldly. He reached out to pat the back of Xiao Wanru's head again, but this time, she had covered it. For a moment, he couldn't help feeling sweet. She was a person who learned from pain. Xiao Wanru, who was pressing the back of her head, suddenly understood and nodded repeatedly. No one in the capital city was optimistic about Chu Luqin. Even if he married a noble miss, she might not be willing to marry him. Moreover, this noble miss might even expose his true strength in the end and ruin his plan. Thinking of this, it was indeed useless for him to marry a noble Mississippi. Chapter 478. You're of little use indeed, but at least you're the only granddaughter of great elder princess. Chu Luqin said naturally. What he said was really reasonable. Xiao Wanru felt speechless. She was the only granddaughter of her grandmother, and no one could compare with her benefits. At least on great elder princess's side, she was irreplaceable. Although she didn't know what substantive use great elder princess had for Chu Luqin. But when you mentioned it before, you didn't know that I was the granddaughter of great elder princess, did you? Xiao Wanru tilted her head to look at Chu Luqin's eyes, but he reached out to turn her head back. So she simply closed her eyes and asked curiously. At that time, she was still Qin Huayong's daughter. Could he say that he wanted to draw Qin Huayong to his side? But at that time, she was just an adopted daughter of Qin Huayong, and it was impossible for Qin Huayong to really stand behind her. I have long known that you are the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. Chu Luqin said gently. He reached out to pull her earlobe, which was as white as jade. Then he was surprised to see that the color of white jade was gradually dyed with pink, and he was more and more eager to play with her ear. Xiao Wanru felt speechless at his words, and reached out to slap his hand that was still touching her ear. Your Highness, you really have foresight. That's natural. When this king first saw you, I already felt that you were a good candidate. This king really didn't misjudge you. Chu Yuchen said more and more matter-of-factly. There was a hint of pride in his gentle voice, which made Xiao Wanru speechless and didn't know what to say next. Xiao Wanru reached out to slap Chu Luqin's hand away a few more times. She felt that it was more appropriate to ask something serious. Your Highness, are you feeling better? This time, you seem to be better than before. Although she didn't feel his pulse in person, she felt that Chu Luqin was really different when they met this time, as if he had changed completely. Actually, this description wasn't quite right. On the surface, he still looked like that sickly, beautiful young man, but in reality, his heart seemed to have changed. When he was suppressing her just now, his strength was unprecedentedly great. This kind of strength didn't seem like something that a person who was about to die should have. This king's body is still not well. The hand that was playing with her earlobe suddenly dropped, as if he had no strength left. Then, he coughed softly, looking extremely weak. This prince's body probably won't be able to hold on for much longer. When the time comes, remember to be a widow for this prince. At least let this prince know that there are still people thinking about this prince. His words were so infuriating that Xiao Wanru even had the impulse to hit him. This evildoer could be more evildoer. But after that, he felt a deep sorrow. He was the pride of the heavens and should have been high and mighty. But now, he was despised by everyone. The so-called sincerity, indeed, how many people treated him sincerely? She couldn't help but look sideways at Chu Luqin. This time, Chu Luqin didn't push her head back. She looked sideways and saw the handsome young man lying quietly beside her. His face was pale, his lips were pale, and even his breathing was pale. His long eyelashes were uneven on his pale eyes. He was very beautiful and out of this world. This kind of appearance should not appear in the secular world. Perhaps only the beautiful young men in books and paintings could compare with him. He was pale and weak, especially when his eyes were closed, and he looked completely harmless. Even though she knew that he was actually a black-hearted person, at this time, she inexplicably felt sorry for the beautiful young man with his eyes closed in front of her. Perhaps when she died in her previous life, she was older than Chu Luqin now. At this time, when she saw Chu Luqin, who was as beautiful as coming out of a painting, and thought about the meaning of his words just now, she inexplicably felt a little pity for him. She involuntarily reached out her hand and gently touched his handsome cheek. The feeling that he closed his eyes and stopped breathing was really sad and uncomfortable. However, her hand was held tightly by a big hand on his cheek. Then, she saw Chu Luchen let go of her hand with a little confusion and reached out to press his forehead. What he did just now was a subconscious action. Whenever someone approached him, he would have such a reaction. Moreover, he would always be able to sense it early. However, this time, he only realized it when it was about to touch his face. He was really too slow. All of a sudden, the room became quiet. Only the two people's light breathing could be heard. Xiao Wanru felt uncomfortable and wanted to explain something. But when she saw Chu Luchen turn his head to one side and continue to close his eyes, she inexplicably felt that she did not know what to say. Since he did not ask, she simply turned her head to one side again and closed her eyes to think about the current situation carefully. Being disturbed by Chu Luchen, the depression in her heart dissipated. After calming down, she closed her eyes and thought about it. Although Qi Tianyu still got the third place in the imperial examination, many things were completely different from the last life. In the last life, at this time, Qin Yuru had replaced her and become the nominal granddaughter of old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion, and she was very fond of her. Because she deliberately said that she was 2 years younger than Qin Yuru, her marriage was postponed. At this time, it was far from the time when she got married. But now, she got married with a bad reputation. In the last life, Qin Yuru was very proud. With Duke Xing's mansion as her back, Ningyuan Army General's mansion, and Duke Yong's mansion was her uncle's family. Madame D controlled the internal affairs of Ningyuan Army General's mansion, and all the bad reputation fell on her. Qin Yuru could be said to have a smooth life. The reason why Rui and Great Elder Princess's mansion did not support her in the last life should be that her maternal grandmother thought that Qin Yuru could not be her biological granddaughter. Although she did not know the reason, her maternal grandmother had always been strong and would do whatever she thought. If she thought that it was not, she would not support Qin Yuru. In this life, even if Qin Yuru married into Duke Yong's mansion, she would not have a good life. She had asked Shui Rulan about what happened that day in private. It was obvious that Qin Yuru had plotted against Di Yan, so that he had to marry her quickly. Originally, she wanted to break off the engagement, and Qin Huayong also agreed. She happily came to get rid of this burden, but in the end, she had to marry Qin Yuru quickly. Everyone would know that she had been plotted against. But this plot made Di Yan suffer in silence. In addition, Qin Yuru had made a lot of noise at that time. If he did not marry her, it would make a big scandal. He had to marry Qin Yuru no matter what. The consequence was that Qin Yuru could marry into Duke Yong's mansion, but she would not have a good life. Even if old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion protected Qin Yuru, she could not live as well as she did in the last life. Countess Yong had always disliked Qin Yuru. In the last life, Di Yan and Qin Yuru were a couple in front of others. Because of Qin Yuru's background, Di Yan did not dare to be too excessive to Qin Yuru. Even if he had an affair with Ning Kaixian, it was done secretly. Later, when he could not hide it, it was revealed. But at least in the beginning, Di Yan sincerely asked to marry Qin Yuru. It was different in this life. With Di Yan's temperament, he married Qin Yuru unwillingly, and Qin Yuru's reputation was so bad. How could Di Yan, who came back after being ridiculed by others, calm down? Qin Yuru was not willing to suffer losses. The whole Duke Yong's mansion could not be peaceful. The direction of this life was completely different from that of the last life. Even if there were some coincidences, it did not affect the overall situation. Thinking of this, she felt more relaxed. She had been obsessed before. She pinched her hand hard and clearly felt a trace of pain in her hand. She also clearly realized that she was different from before. In this life, she would advance step by step. She would not follow the old path of the last life, and she would not be wronged and die hopelessly. Hey, what's wrong with you? You secretly touched me and then fell asleep contentedly. What's wrong with you? Xiao Wanru was shaken by something. She opened her watery eyes and looked at the sky blankly. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Xiao Wanru, you won't abandon me after making use of me, will you? The soft voice in her ear was a little disdainful. Xiao Wanru turned her head blankly and met Chu Liuchen's handsome eyes. He supported his head with one hand and looked at Xiao Wanru with the other, his eyes full of disdain and accusation. She touched her head subconsciously and found that the arm under her pillow was gone. Oh, she didn't know when he took his hand away. Then she said that she fell asleep thinking about it just now. Seeing that Xiao Wanru's face changed from confusion to surprise, and even saw her little face leave a small red mark on the jade slip on his arm, Chu Liuchen inexplicably felt that it was funny. This girl was really muddle-headed, but she looked pitiful and ridiculous. He reached out his hand and touched her pink little face naturally. You touched me secretly just now. I want to take back the principal now. Will there be interest in the future? Interest? Xiao Wanru, who had just woken up, was a little confused. She subconsciously repeated and looked at Chu Liuchen with a pair of misty eyes. Of course there must be interest. Who is this king? Is this king's face something that can be touched so easily? Since you touched my face, of course, I have to touch you back. Haven't you heard of paying a debt? Chu Liuchen said indifferently. The little red mark on his face was really ridiculous. She looked silly and stupid, completely, she wasn't as clever as she used to be. This doesn't seem right. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes again and inexplicably felt that there was something wrong with his words. What's wrong? Just like if you owe me a meal, will you treat me the next time you see me? Chu Liuchen blamed her innocently. Xiao Wanru nodded and felt that his words made sense. But I invited you first. If you are more polite, will you invite me again? This is the interest. Chu Liuchen said effortlessly. It seemed to make sense. Xiao Wanru nodded, but then shook her head, feeling a little confused. Let's go. I'll take you to see someone. Chu Liuchen sat up with a laugh, pulled Xiao Wanru up, patted her head and said. I'll meditate in silence. Xiao Wanru's consciousness finally returned. She pulled Chu Liuchen's sleeve and said. I didn't ask you to leave Yuhui Nunnery because I want to see someone who comes to see you. Chu Liuchen let go of Xiao Wanru's hand with an elegant and free smile, walked to the door, and told Xiao Xuanzi, who was guarding outside the door, prepare a bamboo curtain. Yes, I'll prepare it right away. Xiao Xuanzi answered with a smile. He winked at Yujie, who was beside him, and ran away with a smile. When there was no movement in the room just now, Yujie was startled and wanted to rush in, but was stopped by him. Chapter 479. Qi Tianyu had rushed here in a hurry. He had already changed his clothes from the Third Flower Prince's uniform. Now he was wearing a plain green gown, which was also very ordinary. It was hard to believe that he was the handsome Tanhua who had been chased by thousands of girls in the capital city just a moment ago. Now he was just an ordinary pilgrim in the Yuhui Nunnery, who asked to see the fifth Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion. He said that he was an old friend. The Yuhui Nunnery asked a nun to report it to Xiao Wanru. Hearing that Xiao Wanru went to the silence room, she went to the silence room to report it. After Yujie went in to report it, she came out and said a few words to the nun. The nun nodded and went back. After a while, she led Qi Tianyu, who looked handsome in cyan, over. Yujie had been waiting in front of the courtyard. Seeing Qi Tianyu coming over, she stepped forward and bowed. First young master of the Qi family, my miss is still painting in the silence room. She hasn't finished painting yet. It doesn't matter. I'll wait for a while. Qi Tianyu said gently and stepped into the courtyard. One side of the courtyard faced the mountains. Even standing in the courtyard, one could still appreciate the mountains outside. It was already early spring. Perhaps there was only the faint scent of winter at the foot of the mountain, but one could faintly see the intertwining of the mountains on the mountain. There were dyed cyan mountains, black and brown stones, and from time to time, there were clusters of flowers dotting the mountains. The scenery was extremely beautiful. Chi Baiyu seemed to be stunned. He just stood in the yard quietly and looked at the mountains. He had been looking at them for more than an hour. During this time, he just moved a little bit. It seemed that he was very patient. After a long while, Yujie heard a slight sound coming from the door of the silence room. She hurriedly went in to have a look. Qi Tianyu seemed to have heard nothing. He was still quietly appreciating the scenery with his hands behind his back, without any intention of peeping. First young master of the Qi family, my miss, please. Yujie came out and said to Qi Tianyu. Qi Tianyu nodded and turned to the silence room with a calm face. The door of the quiet room was already open. Qi Tianyu slowly walked in and saw a mat facing the door. Behind the mat was a bamboo curtain, blocking the window behind it. The room was not as bright as he had imagined. Fortunately, the window in the front was also open, so it did not seem particularly dark. There was a small table on the mat, and Xiao Wanru was kneeling on a rush cushion on it with a calm face. She was dressed in plain black clothes and had no other jewelry except for a hairpin. Hearing the sound at the door, she raised her beautiful eyes, which were calm and elegant like water and sparkling. The dim quiet room immediately became lively because of her raising her eyes. Seeing this, Qi Tianyu stopped for a moment, but then he stood up and walked over slowly. Yujie took a round stool from the side, but she didn't put it on the mat where Xiao Wanru was sitting. Instead, she put it in the middle of the room, facing Xiao Wanru. Then she moved a table that matched the round stool, served tea, and retreated to Xiao Wanru's side. Fifth Miss Xiao. Qi Tianyu looked Xiao Wanru up and down and said slowly with cupped hands. It was the first time for Xiao Wanru to meet Qi Tianyu after she returned to the clan. First young master of the Qi family, please sit down, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Qi Tianyu didn't stand on ceremony anymore. He turned around and sat down on the stool on one side. First young master of the Qi family, why do you come up the mountain this time? Xiao Wanru asked. I heard from my sister that a lot of things happened to you. I wanted to come to see you before. On the one hand, it was inconvenient for you to come here just now. On the other hand, I couldn't spare time to help you at that time, Qi Tianyu said in a gentle voice. Qi Tianyu said gently. Although he looked calm, there was a hint of concern in his voice. He had been parading in the street on horseback, but now he appeared on the mountain, which showed his eagerness. From this aspect, it seemed that he really meant something. His words were sincere and didn't sound too ambiguous. There was only a hint of cordial concern in his voice, which was neither too far nor too close, which made people feel good about him. Behind the bamboo curtain, Chu Luqian lay back with a faint smile on his face. He reached out to pull the belt of Xiao Wanru's black robe in front of him and played with it in his hand. The bamboo curtain happened to block him inside, and the window behind him was closed. That area looked dim. Qi Tianyu didn't expect that there was not only Qin Wanru in the silence room, but also a malignant star. First young master of the Qi family, thank you for your concern. I'm fine now. Xiao Wanru said indifferently with her watery eyes slightly raised, without any emotion. Our families are good friends, and the children of the two families grew up together. It has nothing to do with the change of other identities. If you need any help, I will try my best. I didn't have any ability before, but I will gradually become capable in the future. Qi Tianyu's voice became gentler and a little guilty. Qi Tianyu stood up and bowed deeply to Xiao Wanru. As for what happened in Jiangzhou, I was evil at that time. I always wanted to make a clear apology to you, but I never had a chance. I was always afraid that I was not sincere enough. At that time, I was also angry, so I said those hurtful words to you. I'm really sorry. He didn't mean to defend himself at all. First young master of the Qi family, you are too polite. Let bygones be bygones. It's useless to talk about it now. Xiao Wanru looked more and more gentle. First young master of the Qi family, please sit down. Now Qin Yuru has become the young madam of Duke Yong. Let bygones be bygones. Everyone could say generous words, and Xiao Wanru thought that she was not bad. If she didn't have the memory of the last life, she would probably be deceived by Qi Tianyu and think that he had really forgotten what had happened before and apologize to her sincerely. Qi Tianyu was the epitome of selfish and headstrong. In the last life, Qi Tianyu almost ruined her chastity. At that time, when he was drunk, his words rang in her ears. He said that he would never forget the humiliation she gave him and that he must ruin her in order to wash away his humiliation. He was the most honorable child in Jiangzhou, but he had to leave because of her. The hatred from his bones almost drowned Xiao Wanru. Fortunately, Qin Yu came in and found Qi Tianyu. She picked up the teapot on the table and smashed it on Qi Tianyu. After that, she shouted and asked someone to come in. Even so, the person sent by Madame D scolded Xiao Wanru severely. He scolded her for making a fuss and deliberately seducing Qi Baiyu. Xiao Wanru still remembered the vicious look of the person who wanted to pour all the dirty water in the world on Xiao Wanru. What impressed her even more was that Qin Yu was beaten so hard that her leg was almost broken. Fortunately, she found a kind doctor who saved Qin Yu with a lot of good medicine and didn't pay much for the treatment. Speaking of it, it's all my fault. Sister Wanru is a young girl, but I, a man, couldn't help losing my temper and blamed you like that. It's all my fault. I hope you can forgive me. Qi Tianyu bowed deeply again and his face was full of deep self-blame. There was a hint of intimacy in his words. When they were in Jiangzhou, they did call each other like that. But now it sounded like a lifetime ago, and it was indeed a lifetime ago. Child Qi, you are too polite. Please sit down. Child Qi, please don't call me the old way. Even if I am still the second miss of Qin's mansion, it is not appropriate to call me this way. What's more, I am not the daughter of Qin's mansion yet. Although Xiao Wanru's voice was soft, it was cold and distant. She raised her watery eyes, which were still calm. There was still a little childishness on her face, but it didn't make her look innocent and ignorant. Instead, it seemed that she had seen through everything. Qi Tianyu couldn't figure out Xiao Wanru's current state. Could it be that she was really so calm? Or was it because of what happened in Jiangzhou that she had been estranged from him? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. Since he came to the capital city, he had been making up for it. Even Qin Huayong could forgive him and almost arranged the marriage between him and Xiao Wanru. It was impossible for an 11 or 12-year-old girl to see anything. At this time, Qi Tianyu also regretted it. If he had worked harder to persuade Qin Huayong to agree to let Xiao Wanru marry him, he would have two powerful in-laws at this time. At that time, he didn't have many scruples. He didn't work hard on Qin Huayong or show off in front of Xiao Wanru, so he missed an excellent opportunity. Fortunately, it was not over now. Xiao Wanru couldn't live in Duke Xing's mansion anymore, so she came to Yuhui Nunnery. At this time, he was probably the only one who could come to see her. He deliberately chose this time to come here to let Xiao Wanru see clearly how much he missed her. After changing his clothes, he went up the mountain directly. First young master of the Qi family, please sit down. Seeing him still standing aside, Xiao Wanru reached out slightly to beckon him. Qi Tianyu had no choice but to sit down again and said with a smile, I was anxious just now and called you the wrong way. I didn't expect that things remain the same, but people have changed now. Fifth Miss Xiao, please forgive me. Putting away the nostalgia on his face, Qi Tianyu's face became more gentle and elegant. He had an outstanding appearance and had a good reputation as a handsome man in Jiangzhou. At this time, his expression and behavior were all typical, and no one could find any fault with him. He thought that he was also elegant, and it was only a matter of time before he could win Xiao Wanru's heart. Moreover, he had always felt that Xiao Wanru had feelings for him. However, at that time, it was because of Qin Yuru. Now Qin Yuru was Qin Yuru, and Xiao Wanru was Xiao Wanru. They no longer had a relationship, so it didn't matter even if he continued his relationship with Xiao Wanru. Fifth Miss Xiao, do you want to go out for a walk? I heard that the scenery in Yuhui Nunnery is good. Can you accompany me to have a look? Qi Tianyu showed a very appropriate and gentle expression, which he thought was very appropriate. He looked at Xiao Wanru with a pair of handsome eyes seemingly full of affection. He didn't say something, but his reluctant look showed that he was more affectionate. It's my first time in Yuhui Nunnery, and I haven't been to many places. If first young master of the Qi family is interested, you can ask the reception monk to lead the way. Xiao Wanru's long and curly eyelashes fluttered twice, and then she refused when a faint complacent expression appeared on Qi Tianyu's face. The complacent smile froze on his face, and Qi Tianyu reacted quickly and explained, no matter where we go, I just want to take a walk. No matter where we go, it's not suitable. First young master of the Qi family, please. I still need to paint, so I can't accompany you. Chapter 480. Then I won't disturb you, Fifth Miss Xiao. I still have something to deal with and have to go down the mountain. I'll come to see you next time. Qi Tianyu stood up and said to Xiao Wanru with a smile, as if he didn't know that Xiao Wanru's previous words were to refuse him. Yujie, see first young master Qi out. Xiao Wanru answered lightly without raising her head. Qi Tianyu felt very uncomfortable in her casual and cold manner, and he almost failed to keep the warm and elegant smile on his face. He suppressed the anger in his heart and didn't pester her anymore. He turned around and followed Yujie out. When he arrived at the yard, he stopped, looked at Yujie and said, How is your miss doing after coming up the mountain? I heard that she was frightened in Duke Xing's mansion. Thank you, first young master Qi. My miss is fine. She has always lived a luxurious life and has nothing to eat and use on the mountain. If you need anything, you can come to me and I will prepare it for your Mississippi, Qi Tianyu said attentively. If others heard it, they would definitely think that he had a special relationship with Xiao Wanru. Yujie's face turned cold. She reached out to the door and said, First young master Qi, please stop talking. My miss has nothing to do with you. It's not a big deal to trouble you. First young master Qi, please leave. As a servant girl, Yujie was educated differently from ordinary servant girls when she was young. There were some things that other servant girls didn't dare to say, but she said it without any burden. She was very straightforward to drive him away. Qi Tianyu didn't expect that a servant girl dared to talk to him like this. He was so angry that his face changed. However, looking at the slightly open door of the quiet room, he immediately suppressed the anger in his heart and even forced a bitter smile on his face. I have nothing to do with your miss now, but after all, we grew up together. I can't just watch her. Well, I won't say more. If you have any difficulties, just come to me. After saying that, he turned around and walked out before Yujie could say anything unpleasant. His words were not meant for a servant girl who knew nothing. What he intended to say was naturally Xiao Wanru, who was in the slightly open door. These words were so sincere that he didn't believe that Xiao Wanru wouldn't be moved at all. He couldn't be in a hurry and had to take it slowly. It didn't matter if she had a knot in her heart. Qi Tianyu was very confident about this. In the beginning, the Qin sisters were interested in him. However, the younger sister was still a child, so it was impossible for him to have any feelings for a child. But now, he found that the child had grown into a beautiful girl. He could control Qin Yuru, so he could control with Xiao Wanru. He only thought that Xiao Wanru was still a child at that time, so he didn't like her. However, he didn't think that since she was just a child, how could she have adult thoughts about him? He was just a kind brother next door. Shat Wanru. Tea with Yenrut Xiao. With Xiao with. With, Ti Xiao Yenru with Yen. With Xiao with shout. The bamboo curtain was violently pulled down by him. Xiao Wanru was startled, and the painting in her hand fell to the ground. She looked up at Chu Liuchen's handsome and elegant face in astonishment, and then looked at the painting on the ground. She picked it up helplessly and said, "Your Highness, this painting belongs to Xiao Yanru. It's extremely rare. It was found by Chu Luchen and he asked Xiao Xuanzi to bring it here. It's not rare at all. We can find it again." Chu Luchen casually reached out to pull Xiao Wanru's silk ribbon. Xiao Wanru hurriedly reached out to pull it. Although the silk ribbon was used as a decoration on her coat, it would be very ugly if it was pulled off by him. "Your Highness, the ribbon is going to break. Qi Tianyu looks very different today. Did you put powder on your face?" Chu Luchen suddenly asked. Xiao Wanru blinked and shook her head in confusion. "I didn't pay attention to it." When she came in, she glanced at Qi Tianyu and then didn't look at him directly. For the dignity of the royal family, some people put some powder on their faces. Judging from Qi Tianyu's appearance, I know he is the kind of person who put powder on his face. He even came to the Yuhui nunnery with powder. Does he want to hook up with nuns in the Yuhui nunnery? Chu Luchen pulled the silk ribbon in his hand again. "Your Highness, you can go back now. If you come out for a long time, you will be discovered," Xiao Wanru said helplessly. "Let's go and see whether he put powder on his face or not." Chu Luchen stood up and reached out to pull Xiao Wanru up. Then he took her out of the quiet room. When they walked out of the courtyard, Xiao Xuanzi had already come out from a secluded place. He reached out to point in a direction with a complacent smile. He had expected that his master would not let this new Tanhua man go down the mountain so easily. The road over there was a little mysterious, so he led him to walk there. Chu Luchen took Xiao Wanru's hand with interest and followed Xiao Xuanzi down the mountain. After walking for a while, they saw the same mountain wall in front of them and walked around it. The Yuhui nunnery was on the mountain, and there were many mountain roads that stretched out diagonally. Chu Luchen took Xiao Wanru up a mountain road that was inclined upward. There was a big stone at the top of the mountain road, and there were a few pine trees beside it. Chu Luchen took Xiao Wanru to stand beside the big stone and looked down. From a distance, he saw Qi Tianyu still taking a detour on the mountain road below. Xiao Xuanzi left. In fact, the mountain road here was not only mysterious, but also not easy to get out. They had been here for a while, but Qi Tianyu had not taken a detour through the mountain forest. At this time, he had to stand in a stream and think carefully about which angle was the best to get out. He believed that his knowledge was extraordinary. He knew a little about some of the more obscure formations, so it was impossible for him to really be trapped. This was also the reason why he was walking around and was confident that he could get out of this place. However, after being trapped for so long, he thought about it carefully and felt that there was no need to force himself. He could just go back. Even if he was seen by Xiao Wanru's servant girl named Yujie, so what? With that in mind, he wanted to turn around, but before he could do so, a black shadow flashed before his eyes. His body was pushed heavily, and he staggered a few times. He used all his strength to pull on a rock at the side, trying to stabilize his body. Who would have thought that the rock under his feet had been wet for years, and there was some slippery moss growing on it? How could it withstand his weight? With a plop, he fell heavily into the stream, and then slid a few times before sitting directly in the water. The stream was not deep, and the water was clear enough to illuminate one's reflection. However, the way he fell down, his robe was completely soaked. The splashing water drenched him from head to toe. Not only his robe, but his entire body was drenched. Xiao Wanru couldn't help showing a smile on her face. She really wanted to see Qi Tianyu in such a mess. The new Tanhua ranker didn't stay in his own mansion but went to the nunnery and even wet himself. It was really shameful. Think about what he will say when he goes back. Chu Luchen proudly pinched Xiao Wanru's little hand and played with her delicate fingers this time. What will he say? Xiao Wanru asked curiously. He will naturally say that he went up the mountain to enjoy the scenery and worship Buddha and accidentally fell off the cliff. Chu Luchen said with a smile. Well, he won't talk about me, will he? Xiao Wanru glanced at Qi Tianyu, who was trying to get up. After thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was very likely that Qi Tianyu was trying to show his kindness to her now. In the last life, Qi Tianyu and Qi Nuru tried hard to ruin her. She was still the same person. The difference between her and the last life was that she had a good reputation now and her identity had changed. Qi Tianyu's attitude towards her in this life was very different from that in the last life. She silently raised the corner of her mouth and showed a sarcastic smile. Qi Tianyu wanted something from her, so he suppressed the resentment in his heart. No. Chu Luchen said. Xiao Wanru widened her eyes and looked at Chu Yuchen, showing her surprise with her eyes. He dare not. Chu Luchen smiled and reached out to pull her hand, motioning her to look down. A guard in black appeared by the stream and pulled up Qi Tianyu, who was embarrassed. After looking him up and down, he said coldly, "Stay away from our miss in the future. Our princess asked our miss to come up the mountain to observe mourning for our miss and son-in-law. She didn't want anyone to disturb her peace. If you ruin our miss's reputation, the princess will not let you go." The guard put his hands on his waist and said loudly with a fierce look. It was obvious that he was not an easy person to get along with. As the mountain wind blew, Qi Tianyu was so cold that he could only shiver, but his mind was clear. He immediately realized that the guard in front of him should be Rui, and great elder princess's man. He immediately became respectful and said, "Brother guard, don't worry. I will never get Sister Wanru involved in this matter. Please report it to great elder princess." After saying that, he forced himself to turn around and leave. Although he was cold all over, he seemed to have a strong character. Only Chu Luchen, who was on the mountain, laughed silently and couldn't stop for a while. Seeing Qi Tianyu leave along the way, Xiao Wanru went back and pulled Chu Liuchen's sleeve, saying, "Your Highness, we can go back. The show is over." With the words, "Great Elder Princess's guard," Qi Tianyu didn't dare to say anything. It saved her a lot of trouble. She was extremely unwilling to get involved with Qi Tianyu again. "If he dares to do anything to you next time, I will kill him." After laughing, Chu Liuchen's face darkened. He looked in the direction where Qi Tianyu left, and his handsome eyes immediately became cold and ruthless. Xiao Wanru speechlessly watched him change his face again, from a cute boy who couldn't stop laughing to a cold and gloomy king of Azura. Chu Luchen definitely deserved the title of King of 1,000 Faces. "Let's go up and have a look." Chu Luchen raised his eyes to look at another path diagonally upward, and the look on his face immediately became full of meaning. "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.